Okay, so we should be live here on Progressive Voice. I'm Adam Lippman, and we are going to give this a shot. This is our first ever live stream. Hopefully, everything will go well. We have a great guest tonight to talk to us via Skype. Bee Kannegundla. Bee and I met each other at the CNN town halls where we got to sit through. Well, we didn't get to sit through Bernie. We had the good fortune to sit through Bernie doing a town hall. And then we got to see Mayor Pete. And then after Mayor Pete, we got to see Amy Klobuchar. And neither of those two individuals are still in the race. The only person left in the race at this juncture from that town hall is Bernie. But one of the reasons why we wanted to start, and as you see, I'm wearing my glasses, and we're a little bit ad hoc here right now. But one of the reasons why I wanted to go ahead and start doing these live streams is because we have a situation right now, and it affects all of us. It's pretty difficult when you think about it. A lot of people are staying home. A lot of people are out there wondering if they're going to get sick, if they are sick. We also have a number of people who are self-quarantining, and all of this has a huge impact on the primary election, because when people would normally be out there knocking on doors, be out there sharing fellowship, trying to get people on the Bernie train before this next debate, which is tomorrow evening. It's rough because so many of us want to be out there. We want to be active. We want to be doing things, but we can't because, quite frankly, it's not safe. Mm-hmm. So, want to talk to you about that. We'll bring B up here in a minute. And in addition to that, you can, if you want to join us, we can also probably hook that up. Just let us know in the comments, and I'll try and get you on. In the future, I'll have that set up as well. So, welcome to our opportunity to self-quarantine, but at the same time be a part of our progressive community. If school gets shut down, which it might not. Right now in Clark County, it isn't. But in the event that school were to get shut down, I'll be with you a lot more, either in this venue or on a number of the other streams that I participate in. But in our digital age, just because we have this illness that's going on doesn't mean that we cannot have interactions socially. This can be a very, very isolating time coming up. And forgive me, I'm looking at the computer. I do see that we have one person on there, or we did. And I'm going to try and also get us set up so that if you do comment on the live stream, that I will be able to see it. And, hopefully, we'll get all of that squared away. So I am going to, I'm in computer land here. Hold on a second. This is a little crazy again. Like I said, we're doing this for the first time. There's my button. So if you do want to share a comment with us, you can do that, and we may be able to pop that comment up on the screen. So right now, I know he's sort of waiting in the wings. I'd like to bring out B. So let's hope this works. Okay, B, you there?
Yep, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Man, right on.
Awesome. Sounds good.
So I have the camera mirrored, so like when I look over at your icon on my computer, it actually looks like I'm looking at your little window there.
Got it.
So,
nice. Very cool. So how's it going, man?
It's going well, man. It's going well.
Cool.
Why don't you tell us a little bit about your Bernie journey? What brought you to Bernie, and we'll go from there.
Yeah, I mean, for me, it was amazing because, like, I initially was, I think I really only got activated probably like in 2016 when it was like Hillary versus versus Trump and everything, and I was just like, whoa, this Trump guy seems crazy, you know. And I just like looked at it and I was just like, whoa, what is going on? So then I actually went ahead and I actually volunteered on the Hillary 2016 campaign, like for the general, not for the primary, because I never participated in primaries at all. And then after I seen what happened, I was like, oh my God, it just became like after Trump won, I was just like, whoa, what are we doing wrong? And honestly, the journey kind of started at once Trump took office for me. Like, I was just like, what is really going on? How is it that we got somebody who's so crazy into office? And I really had to figure it out. And I just kept on looking at things. And one of the things I noticed was that mainstream media, especially like MSNBC and CNN, they are there, but they look more like, I just felt it was kind of crazy when they were talking about the Russia thing and all this other stuff, and I was just like, okay, maybe that's true, but I think, isn't the purpose of government to help people? That was what I was, and it just seemed a little crazy. And then after I started seeing more and more of this, I just was like, okay, I need to figure out what actually caused for Trump to actually win, because we need to counteract that to actually win against him in 2020. So as I kept on watching things, and I just been, I like people like Kyle Kalinske, the Young Turks, all these progressive news channels have been amazing for me to really understand, hey, the purpose of government is for public service, not for corporate service. That's the one biggest thing I figured out, and I was just like, whoa. You know what? This is exactly what government's supposed to do. We're supposed to actually do public service. So, and then I just kept on looking at all the different people, and I was just like, then when I seen Bernie, I was like, oh my God, how is it that he wasn't elected in 2016? That was crazy. He should have been our president right now. This is absolutely ridiculous. He's the only one I've seen who actually believes in what the government's supposed to do, which is public service. So that's where my really journey came through. Was like, oh my God, this is, I mean, and I love calling him Tio Bernie, in my opinion. I love that, because I love Spanish a lot, so, and I took like 6 years of it. Even though I'm not Hispanic, I'm East Indian, like origin-wise. I just love the Spanish language. I love Spanish everything. So, but I mean, Theo Bernie, oh my God, he is just absolutely phenomenal. And I just was like, when I seen this, I was just like, oh my God, this is like somebody who's actually for the people. It was like, oh my, how is it that he wasn't there? So, like right now, I think people don't realize it, but people who actually go and gravitate toward Bernie, it's really hard for us to try to go toward any other person because we understand what public service is. And we understand that you should not take any corporate money, you should not do any of this kind of stuff because whatever you do is for the people.
Sure.
So I think, and I think that's really what I was just like, that's why it's very hard. And I got to give a lot of props to a lot of people who are on, Bernie 2016, who actually voted for Hillary, because, I mean, if you really look at it, I mean, Hillary was very corrupt. I hate to say that, you know, and really it was, after I seen that, I was just like, I mean, for me right now, for me to go to any other candidate is absolutely, I mean, it's hard. I don't know if I can even do it, to be honest with you.
Well, we don't have to get there quite yet.
I know. And I hope that we never do. I mean, really, Bernie is, I mean, we are so lucky to have somebody who's really fully people. I've never seen somebody like this ever. I mean, it's just, if he actually gets in, which I really pray that he does, it's a big thing. It's like a transformational thing where we actually can do things that we can finish out what FDR wanted us to do. You know, if you go back in history, like FDR, Kennedy, I mean, they've been asking for like a healthcare program for everybody for a long time. And technically we've been waiting more than 100 years or whatever it is. We've been waiting a long time. So
we have. And one of the things that, you know, also like today, for example, you mentioned FDR. Today, yes. Bernie did a fireside chat. He was there with FaZe and it just talking to the people. And what's interesting, as I mentioned a little bit earlier ago, when we look at the fact that we are in a time that can be very isolating. One of the things that Fez brought up was that the Bernie campaign is in many ways kind of uniquely suited to these times, just in terms of communication. They've been taking it directly to the people to get out their message. Well, since 2016, in a lot of individual outlets, but here in 2020, he's basically got his own network on YouTube, and it's easy enough to do. I mean, we're doing that right here, right now. But in addition to that, they had all of that infrastructure for direct communication with the people put in from the beginning of this campaign, because they knew that independent media, they knew that getting the message directly across was going to be extraordinarily important as we moved along with the 2020 campaign. And just in this moment in time, that's crucial. And there is no other way. We don't have people out there knocking on doors. We don't have people congregating. We don't have rallies. So because of that unique infrastructure, he's posting pretty much every day, talking directly to the people. Now, and maybe you would have an opinion on this as well, but one of the things that does concern me is we're getting so much Bernie right now, and that's phenomenal for those of us who already support Bernie. But when we talk about that older population, we talk about, I hate to lump everybody, sort of together, but when we talk about boomers, they're not partaking in independent media. They're not on Facebook so much. They're not on Twitter. They're not on YouTube. They don't get so much of their video content through YouTube, which we do. As I say, younger generations. I mean, I'm sort of at the tail end of Generation X. I haven't asked where you're at in that spectrum. Okay.
I'm a Zennial.
well, you've aged so much better than I have. But but we get a lot of our content through independent media, through YouTube. The boomers that we really need to reach, not so much. But one thing that may be a positive impact with all of this is that we are able to kind of double down and reinforce the one part of Bernie's argument that is not resonating right now. We are able to double down on the electability argument. And just looking at this right here, I mean, I'll fully admit, and perhaps I should be better researched, I have not seen Joe Biden have a massive presence on YouTube. Now, that may just be me. I may just not be locked into the feeds where Joe Biden is posting to YouTube. He may be posting furiously all the time, or surrogates maybe, but I haven't seen it. And that does sort of come to the question of the electability argument, in the sense that in a crisis like right now, we don't have to depend on corporate media to get the word out, because Bernie's already capitalized on what's coming next. And for those who say that Bernie's so old, it doesn't. The people that are surrounding him have made sure that he has an independent media presence, that he has a YouTube presence. So one of the things, that kind of struck me when we were sitting at the town hall. Now, I remember, I don't know how you felt. It wasn't exactly like the national convention where we had as much security to go through, but we did have security to go through. We had to empty our pockets. We got wanded, all of that, to go into this town hall. And I remember standing in the line to actually get into the shooting location, as it were. And we're standing there, and they're saying, no, go forward, don't leave any empty seats, make sure you fill in the front first. And I know for me, anyway, there was this sort of question as to, oh gosh, we're going to be sitting here for 3 hours, and am I going to be sitting next to some rabid Klobuchar fan.
I know.
Is this going to be so unpleasant? Um, and honestly, the young woman who was sitting to my left, I don't recall. I think she was a Bernie supporter. I think she was undecided. And then, of course, to her left and farther were people who were asking questions, sort of on the aisle. But I do recall saying, "Oh my gosh, I'm going to be here for 3 hours. I hope it's not an unpleasant 3 hours." And I was felt so fortunate that
Right.
you and I struck up a conversation,
Oh, definitely, definitely.
which kind
And
of
I think I remember Mayor Bloomberg was the one that we talked about, and I was like, oh
right.
no, let's not talk about that. Yeah, because I have a sincere, I just do not like him for some reason, just because of what he did in New York. I just think that it was very divisive, and it's something that we do not need in the country right now.
Sure, sure.
So,
And unfortunately,
yeah.
that's no longer an issue. Um,
Right.
yeah,
Yeah, yeah.
the
That's
Bloomberg
one positive.
phenomenon. And I always
Yeah.
wondered what would they call the Bloomberg supporters,
Yes.
They call the Bernie supporters, burners, sometimes Bernie bros, although
Right.
demographically there are more young women in favor of Bernie than young men.
Yes.
Um,
Mhm.
but I always wonder, would they start calling them bloomers? And was that too close to boomers for comfort?
It might be close to boomers. Yes, exactly. I think you're right. And going with that boomer thing, like my dad he's a boomer. So when I was talking with him and I had to convince him to go with Bernie, he eventually decided on it just primarily because of me, you know. But he wasn't sure because he has a steady dose of MSNBC and a steady dose of CNN and honestly during that one period of time just before Super Tuesday, he's seen all of that and he's like, oh my God, it looks like Biden's gonna get a lot of stuff. I mean, and he has a steady dose of it. So I think what happened is honestly the only reason why we lost some of the momentum is honestly it's pretty much MSNBC and CNN. That's the major reason. And I think if we didn't lose that momentum, I think we'd be in a better place right now. I think we still have a chance. I still think that we have a chance. I just really think that we need to probably make some type of media that's almost similar to MSNBC and CNN that's in the major distribution and cable. I think that's one of the things. I think Kyle even talked about it. I mean, we're amazing on YouTube. Like the people like us who are like progressive and all that, all of that. And I mean, Crystal Ball on Rising and everything like that. We just need to have our own, like almost our own cable channel, just like how Fox News has its own, and CNN. And honestly, like CNN and MSNBC, they're like the same. There's really no difference between either one. And and I think that honestly, we need to try to get one that's called a progressive type channel or something like that, that really shows our perspective, because our perspective is all about helping people. That's what our perspective is all about. I mean, it's about us actually following what's called public service. That's really what we're about. And I think right now, I mean, even with my parents, like my dad, even though he knows that Biden takes, from billionaires and stuff like that, he would have, if it wasn't for me, he would have probably voted for Biden.
Yeah.
So I think it's just the fact that it's ingrained in people's brains that, oh, it doesn't matter as long as you look good on TV and you do that, but it doesn't matter what you do. But that defeats the purpose of what it is about being in government. Your perspective in government is to make sure that the people are safe and people are treated well. So I think we need to get that back through. And it's amazing because like a lot of the people who are boomers and everything like that, they have so many things that they got from FDR right now. So that's why they don't see the need for it.
Well, do you think
Yeah.
that that part of the difficulty there, I think is a key factor, and just to talk about a couple of things, jumping
Right.
to what you were mentioning.
Right.
I recall after the last big block of Tuesday votes that we had,
Yes.
I couldn't take it anymore. I wasn't watching corporate media. I couldn't take
Guilty
corporate
vote. Guilty
media
vote.
at that point. So I was actually watching TYT,
Mhm.
and you know and I don't know. I am a TYT fan, absolutely, but sometimes,
No, me too. Me too.
sometimes
Yeah.
sometimes it can be a little bit much. And Cenk was really, really pissed,
Oh yeah.
and
And
there was
I was
just
with them.
so much going on. But one of the
Mhm.
things that they did talk about is the influence of the corporate media, CNN,
Yeah.
MSNBC, Fox News.
Mhm.
Um, and
Exactly.
they're these massive media conglomerates, and for something like the closest we have, or at least I should say the largest that we have. I
Mm.
mean, there are people that we are familiar with. I mean, we're all
Right.
familiar with Rising, but that's like short.
Yes.
That's so short. I mean, that's maybe an hour or so in the morning.
Right. And
And
it's broken up
yeah,
too.
well, it is. But we'll talk later because I figured out how to like actually get it to stream like one long show.
Oh no
Yeah,
way.
and I'm
Oh,
I'm sure
cool.
I'm
Yeah.
not the
Oh,
only one who
yeah.
figured it out, but
Oh, that's
I
cool.
finally did
Okay. Yeah.
figure that out. Um,
Nice.
and it's not that difficult. I had to learn because I'm old, but
No,
I'm
come on.
sure
Yeah.
like our millennial brothers and sisters probably already knew how.
Mm.
Nonetheless, even so, even when you air it and you watch it all at once, it's really like an
Right.
hour. And
That's
TYT,
an hour.
2-3 hours during the day, and their quote unquote, affiliate networks, that partners like Kyle.
Right.
But if there's the majority of the politicosphere, if that's a word,
Right.
which if not, I just made it up. But the larger amount of those who are looking for content and news,
Mm.
if they don't know about it's going to completely go unseen. You don't see that on your
Mm.
guide in cable. And
Right.
they were talking about how they're dwarfed. I mean, TYT is sort of the largest network. It is the most watched actual show on
Mm.
YouTube. Um, but at the same, and they have podcasts associated with it, and various things.
Mhm.
But even so, the market share, the amount of people that they can reach is so much smaller than
Yes.
someone flipping their channels, through their cable company. And
Yeah.
so the outsized influence, and quite frankly, I'm sure I know I posted about this
Mhm.
earlier on, but
Right.
if you want to talk about the Biden surge in Super Tuesday,
Mhm.
South Carolina continuing on, it's not about what the Biden campaign did. It's about what
Yeah.
corporate media did to prop up the Biden campaign.
Yep. I mean, if you really look at it, honestly, like Adam, the way that they did it, they basically propped him up. And I mean, they somehow made it so that he was the most electable. And he, because of all these endorsements, like, I mean, Mayor Pete endorsing him, Amy Klobuchar. And then after that, I mean, honestly, like, it was something that caught basically everybody on the Bernie team and everybody off guard because nobody expected this in such a short period of time. So, and honestly, like if you ever noticed when Bernie was winning after Nevada, all the coverage on him was negative, negative, negative.
Sure.
There was like no positive at all. And then once Biden gets this, this win over in South Carolina, it was all positive, positive, positive. So it just basically propped up and said, "Oh, I've made all the boomers and everybody be like, oh, is this a guy? He's the guy." Okay, so because all this positive coverage, like, oh, he can beat Trump, he can beat Trump. And if you ever ask any of the people who actually voted for Biden, what policies or what were you really interested in? Why'd you pick Biden? They're like, oh, he can beat Trump. He can beat Trump because that
Sure.
was ingrained based on corporate media. Corporate
Absolutely.
media. I mean, they just beat it down on every single boomer. So, I mean, if you actually did things based on policies, which you should be doing when it comes to like choosing a candidate, Bernie would win in a landslide because everything he says is popular. And then the shocking thing, all the exit polls for like removing private insurance, all above water. Every single one of them. They want to go Medicare for all. They want to basically have universal health care. But then they still pick Biden because it was beaten down on them by corporate media. So this is like something I think, I mean, and nobody expected that many numbers. I think Kyle called it normie
Yeah,
Democrats.
no,
I don't
he
know what.
does. He calls it normie
Yeah,
Democrats all the time.
Democrats. Yeah. So I mean, honestly, I was just like, oh my god, it was just too much. But I mean, even with all of that, we still have a chance.
Oh yeah.
Let's not forget that we still have a chance.
Well,
You know,
I'm glad
not
you
even
brought that
close to
up.
1,000. Yeah.
I'm glad you brought that up because, yeah, and Kyle does call it, he's like Revenge of the Normie Democrats.
Hmm.
And
And the Empire Strikes
yeah,
Back.
The Empire Strikes Back exactly on Super Tuesday, and then the last one, Revenge of the Normie Democrats. It's it's so true. I mean, because people aren't voting policy at this point;
Right.
they're voting electability. And
Right.
Chuck Rocha was on Rising the other day, and he was talking about that they're working and working so hard in so many
Mhm.
different outlets,
Right.
and they're putting in the work. And then Biden comes in on Super Tuesday. He gets the one endorsement from Clyburn. People get behind
Yeah.
him, and they
Yeah.
forget how
Yep.
unelectable he seemed at the beginning of the process, which is why
Right.
he was so far behind. And then you get all these people falling in line.
Mm.
In and when we're talking about the normie, I like normie Democrats too because one of the
Right.
things that that a lot of the folks on independent media have been talking about is how
Mhm.
the now that when we get a phrase that works as progressives, we find a
Yes.
phrase that works,
Yes.
and
Yes.
we're trying to be nice. We try so
Hmm.
hard to be nice because
Right.
we know we're going to be
Yes.
attacked for being mean, whether we're mean or not. So we try so
Yeah. Yeah.
hard to be nice, and we come up with things like we don't blame scared Democrats. We blame establishment Democrats. We blame the
Exactly. Yeah.
establishment,
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
and then they take that phrase, the establishment, which truly just means the status quo. This is the
Exactly.
institutionalized democracy that the parties have
Hmm.
given us at this point.
Right.
It's not about
I
any
just wanted to
individual
say,
person. So
yeah.
they steal that
Yeah.
term establishment and they try to make
Oh,
that something that we're using to attack.
absolutely.
Of course, my viewpoint at that point is, well, if you don't, if being part of the establishment to you is an attack, then why are you part of the establishment? If it makes you feel bad to have that
Exactly.
pointed out. But the truth
Right.
is, what we're really talking about are status quo Democrats. And as you and I
Hmm.
have talked about many times,
Yeah.
you know,
Yeah.
just we know because we're progressives. So we
Mhm.
understand that the idea of a return to the status quo is impossible now. We can't go back
Right.
and
Right.
just hit the reset button and go back
Yes.
to where we were before Trump because the truth is that where we were before Trump under the Obama Biden administration um, is part of the institution as a government, institutional government. It's
That gave
part
us
of
Trump.
exactly. It's the institution that
Hmm.
put the conditions into place for the rise of a Trump presidency to begin with. So
Right.
going just resetting back to that point is not going to help us in the long run.
We might get a worse Trump.
Yeah, we may get something worse, but I don't try to vote out of fear. I say vote your principles, vote what you believe in, and someone like Trump
Hmm.
does not represent the country that I believe in, that I love. But
Right.
be that as it may, at the end of the day, trying to hit that reset button, really what we had, and I mentioned this in an earlier video
Hmm.
on Progressive Voice on YouTube, YouTube, was that is it really going back to policies that worked for you, or is it going back to a sort of gentility, a different time period where we were able to feel good about ourselves because the president was eloquent, because we would hear President Obama speak, and I
Right.
miss the eloquence of Barack Obama because I'm a word person,
Right.
and I'm
Right.
an oratory person, and Obama gave great oratory. So looking back at those things, yes, it made me feel good. It made me feel good to
Mm.
be a Democrat. I felt good to have voted for Obama, and
Right.
every day when he got in front of the camera, regardless of what was going on, he gave across a persona that
Mm.
I wanted to get behind because he was so eloquent and I had the good fortune when I was working in West Las Vegas at a grad school at the library to have met President Obama at actually, then it was first organizer Obama, and then later
Community
candidate for Senate
organizer.
Obama. But he always struck me as such a real, genuine individual.
Yes.
But I start to wonder, and this is gonna sound like a Biden attack, and I don't mean it to, but it's just really what there's plenty about Biden to go on the attack. But in terms of what I'm trying to get across, I find myself wondering. We had Obama who had many progressive ideas, wanted to at least go and get us a public option in healthcare. Although now we know that in our current healthcare system, just having a public option is not going to do what we need it to do. But even at the time, and then you had someone who was a long-standing, for lack of a better term, establishment Democrat for years in the Senate with Joe Biden. And I know that Joe Biden saw himself kind of as a political mentor to Obama, who really didn't have all that much experience at that point when he became president. So I find myself wondering, did we elect Obama? Did we elect a change maker, a candidate whose message was hope and change? And was it Biden and his influence that pulled Obama farther and farther to what he considered to be the political center? I mean, you and I have talked at length. The fact is, we've been dealing with this for as long as either of us have been able to vote. We've got Democrats who are constantly saying, we need to work with the Republicans. We need to work across the aisle. That's what we hear every election. We need to work across the aisle. We need to work across the aisle. And we've been hearing that since Clinton. That is the Bill Clinton model, the Clinton machine with the ridiculously undue influence of people like James Carville, who's how are we going to work across the aisle? So the Republicans are there. I don't care. I don't care about working with you. I will just obstruct everything.
Right.
So we've got the work, and we know that those are kind of ideological extremes on either side. And then we've heard from Bernie, we've heard from any number of people in elected office that the truth lies somewhere, at least in cooperation between those two things, in getting things done when you're actually on the floor of the House or the floor of the Senate.
Right.
But what we hear from the echo chamber, the Beltway bubble, it's always Democrats, we got to work with Republicans. We got to elect someone who can work across the aisle. And then Republicans just basically saying no.
We can get whatever we want.
Right. And so for 40 years, much longer than either of us have been able to vote. But from Clinton 1, the Clinton 1 administration, we've got this move towards neoliberalism. Wow, I'm pulling a Biden there. Sorry, y'all.
Yeah.
This move toward neoliberalism where we've got, we meet the Republicans halfway, which means we move farther to the right. And then they keep moving the bar. So the farther to the right the Republicans move, we move to meet them center. And that has moved our party over longer than the 40 years of neoliberalism. But even before that, trying to meet them halfway, they keep moving farther to the right, which moves us farther to the right, to the point that right now a neoliberal agenda, your blue dog Democrats, your status quo Democrats, your establishment Democrats, for lack of a better term, where they see the center is really an ideology more in keeping with a Reagan Republican than any kind of Democrat before that.
I would even say that it's even further than that to the right, to be honest with you. Like right now, honestly, if you look at Bernie, he's actually the center.
He is.
And people say that he's far. I'm like, no, it's because we're so far right that we don't see that he's actually the center.
Absolutely.
He's actually more of the regular person. Like he's what we should be as public servants and things like that. I just wanted to go back to one thing about what you said about Clyburn real quick. Now, I feel really horrible about this, but Clyburn is unfortunately a big-time neoliberal because he basically took so much money from pharmaceuticals as well as medical insurance companies. He took so much of that. That's why he was so easy for him to endorse Biden, because he really wanted to continue getting the gravy train. So I don't want to put any big things on that, but there was no way that he would ever endorse Bernie. Right. Just because he knows Bernie's strict stance of public service.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
you
and
know, we got to understand. We got to like, and I feel bad because a lot of the people who are like boomers and things like that, they fell into the trap of like, oh wow, Clyburn says that this is the guy, you know, so they just fell in line
absolutely,
with that,
and
you
we
know.
talked about the gravy train a second ago, and
Exactly.
it's the funding of the campaign, and we all know how Bernie funds his campaign, but
Hmm.
we didn't expect over on those of us who are for Bernie. I think
Right.
by and large we kind of know what to expect from the other side, and if there was
Yeah.
any question
Yeah.
of what we should expect from the other side, that was
It's
certainly kicked out of us in 2016.
yeah. Yep.
But the truth of what you're saying, you know, I have a video that's going to come out sometime as soon as I have a chance to record it. I've finished writing it, and it's another one of those sort of televised speechy kind of videos.
Right.
But one of the
Right.
things that I talk about in it is that earlier in the campaign, it really very much felt like what people were looking for, the neoliberals. They were
Hmm.
they wanted to go where we are. They wanted to come over, to the bright
Right.
side of the road here.
Right.
But they needed someone to tell them that was okay. They needed permission. It's like they
Right.
were waiting for permission, which is every time you hear the vote blue no matter who folks talk about
Right.
getting on board with whoever the nominee is. They're like, fall in line. Everybody needs to fall in line. You
Right.
need to get with the
Mhm.
program. They're always talking about unity, which basically means we need to agree with them. We need to
Right.
capitulate with them. Never that they need to sort of move over and
Exactly.
adopt what we're talking about. But I felt that people I would come across in voting sites, in various venues, various events,
Mhm.
they just felt they needed permission. They were waiting on
Right.
permission, and if they had gotten that permission
Right.
to dream, to believe, to hope, to get behind Bernie, to get behind the policies, they felt
Right.
the relief that you could see on their faces here in Nevada after Bernie won,
Yes.
and they were starting to talk about getting on board with that was
Yes.
palpable.
Yeah.
It was like this weight
Right.
had been lifted because they had
Right.
because he won
Right.
so convincingly.
Yes.
They finally felt permission to go ahead and get on
I,
our
I
bus.
think.
Our,
I
our
think.
lovely rainbow colored,
Right.
school bus going to Hippieville, I guess.
Right.
But
I.
it was
Yeah.
beautiful. And now, in terms of Clyburn, what they received from
Hmm.
the mechanism, and it was a mechanism. Let's be clear.
Oh, purely,
As
purely.
you and I
Yes.
spoke,
Absolutely.
on the
Absolutely.
day of Super Tuesday or the day before Super Tuesday, you know, it's not cheating. And I just want to put this out there to
Right. Right. Right.
coalesce
It's
behind a
not.
candidate.
It's not. It
It
really
was
isn't.
it
Yeah. You're.
strategic? The timing, absolutely. Was it
Mhm.
was it kind of snaky and did it feel sort of underhanded? Yeah, it did.
Right.
But
Right.
the truth of the matter is, it's just politics. They didn't do anything illegal. They didn't. It wasn't
No.
shenanigans. It was
No.
a
No.
strategic coalescing behind the candidate that the establishment decided they were going to go for. And
Right.
when that happened, that gave permission for the swing to happen the other way. And it takes a
Right.
lot more for a neoliberal, an establishment individual, to feel that
Hmm.
they have the okay, to feel that they have permission to get behind a
What do you
progressive
think?
candidate than it does to get behind an establishment
Right.
candidate. And I'll just finish this point. So when
Yeah.
Clyburn came out and endorsed Biden in South
Mm.
Carolina, and then, well, right before that, when Pete and Klobuchar dropped out and immediately endorsed him and started campaigning with them,
Right.
that was all of these establishment people coming behind and giving again permission
For
to
people to go.
support this
Yeah.
candidate who basically up until that point pretty much looked done. So
Yep.
that gave them permission to get behind
Right.
Biden as their neoliberal choice, and that just set the progressive agenda in terms of this election way back because
Mm.
it took a lot less for them to need permission to get behind Joe Biden than it would for them to get behind Bernie Sanders. And that, of course,
Right.
I'm sure is what the Nancy Pelosi's and the James Carvilles and the
Mhm.
old way of doing things Democrats, I'm sure they knew
Right.
that. I don't agree with them And I think James Carville is kind of losing his marbles. I think we've spoken.
The Crypt Keeper.
You called him the Crib Keeper, right? You were saying it was the Crib Keeper. I generally refer to him as Skeletor. But in either way, he's so out of touch because
Right.
when you look at, and this is something that, and after I finish this thought, I'd like to hear what you think about the idea. In my work with the Progressive Coalition over the years, I was often in the face, or often had called to be in the face of James McCurdy, who is the state party chair,
Yeah.
and all of these other things that are going on. And what I kept saying in meeting after meeting after meeting is, I'm like, when are you guys going to get with the fact that the party is made up of the people who register as Democrats? The
Right.
Democratic Party is made up of the actual Democrats. So what you need to listen to are what the actual Democrats are telling you.
Right.
Democrats don't exist to see the will of the party done. The party is supposed to exist to unify and coalesce so that what actual Democrats want is what is able to come out. And that is anybody who registers to vote with a D in front of their name. That's not anywhere on the ideological spectrum except voter registration. And I kept saying, sooner or later, you're going to have to realize that if you don't start listening to the people, the actual people who make up the Democratic Party, you're going to find yourselves without a Democratic Party. And there was this line from The West Wing. I know so many Gen Xers love to quote The West Wing who are involved in politics, but there was a line that said, a leader with no followers is just a guy taking a walk. And so much about the Democratic Party leads me to believe that if they keep going in the way that they're going, they're just going to be a party out taking a walk, party leadership out there taking a walk. Because the center of the Democratic Party should be perceived as the mean. Where does the majority of the Democrats, where are they on the ideological spectrum? And what we see in exit poll after exit poll after exit poll is that the center of the Democratic Party is with the policies that Senator Sanders is running on. So in that way, we are not, the neoliberals are not centrists. They are neoliberals. They are to the right of the centrists. Where the center of the party is with us. The center of the party believes in Medicare for all. They believe in getting rid of this ridiculous amount of college debt. They agree with free colleges and universities. And what is so disturbing, and Bernie has said this so many times, it's one of the many things that's so disturbing, but he's said it many, many times. When he went to college at City College of Brooklyn, before he went to University of Chicago, that public university or that public college was tuition free. We have all of this older generation, let's just call them boomers. We have all of these boomers who are neoliberal, and just to be fair, not all boomers are neoliberal. But we have the majority of neoliberals who are boomers, and so many of these things that we want, an end to this ridiculous amount of college debt, a medical and health insurance system that makes sense and is humane. And we've talked before that up until Nixon, it was not legal to profit from illness. There was no such thing as a for-profit healthcare industry. That was right before I was born. So these things are not so far in the past. And many of these things are programs that allowed the parents of the current boomers and the current boomers themselves to move up, to succeed. And those programs, because of this move of neoliberalism to move to the right, and then Republicans move to the right, so we move to the right. And we do this cha-cha, and we do this dance. We have now gone away from what allowed that generation to thrive, the greatest generation, what allowed them to thrive. All we are asking for, really, when you look at it, is to start at the same place where they did, to have the same programs in place that allowed them to succeed. Let's bring those things back, because those are the things that, because of FDR, they were able to succeed in as they were young people moving up into the world. And so to do a reset and bring those programs back and expand on them, when just bringing them back would be stagnation for
Right.
generations of people.
Right.
So
Right.
they need to recognize that the center of the party is where the American people who are Democrats, where the Democrats
Right.
that make up the party stand.
Mhm.
What do they
Right.
believe ideologically? And that's when you
Right.
have the center of the party.
Right.
So, I mean, do you feel the same way? Do you agree with that sentiment?
I mean, I agree with that, and one of the things I would definitely add to that is, I mean, I think everybody in the U.S. are sick and tired of useless wars and endless wars. You know, I think that's one of the major things that can actually unite everybody in the U.S. It's just kind of surprising that we're actually that I mean, in the Democratic Party, they're thinking about going with somebody who's just I mean, it's like identical to Hillary. I mean, it's kind of like Hillary 2.0 is what we're going through right now. When you're voting for Biden, you're voting for Hillary 2.0. You're going to be able to, I mean, honestly, like Trump can go to the left of Biden and just get and basically depress the Democratic vote. So I don't think people realize how much of. I mean, I feel like as if we're going through deja vu again. To be honest with you, right now it feels like deja vu, and it's primarily because of corporate media. And I think people are not looking at policies, and they're just looking at electability based on cable news. And that's the biggest problem. They're not looking at, hey, what does this person actually stand for? You know, like a lot of the people, and I can even tell it like with even with my friend, he's older than me, and but he's still an Xer. But like he was telling me, he's like, oh, I like Bernie's policies. I think I'm totally with it, but I'm gonna get in just because he's willing to take Bloomberg's money. And I was like, what? That just shocked me. I was like in shock over that because I was like, that kind of defeats the purpose of public service, you know. So that shocked me. So I think for some reason, some people who are older, they still have this ingrained in their head that, oh, you can take money from other people, it doesn't matter, just make sure you beat Trump, you know. I think that down on all these boomers big time. Like they're like, oh, Bloomberg is going to go ahead and give his money to them. And it's like, oh, that means we're going to have more money to fight Trump. That's what they're thinking in their head. But there's ridiculously, really, really bad strings that are attached to that money, and people don't realize that. I mean, I don't know if you've seen it, but Biden's like apparently there was like a that came. Biden was gonna, if he gets in, he's gonna make Bloomberg the head of the World Bank. I was like, dude, what the? It kind of defeats the whole purpose of why you do public service. I mean, it's like it's contrary to what we should be doing.
Sure. I mean,
it's just
yeah. I remember when you I remember when I heard about that document that you're talking about.
Yes.
In terms of prospective cabinet appointments under Biden, and I'd love to think. I mean, we don't. They still haven't verified it. So let's be clear that the Biden campaign has not verified the authenticity of that document. Disturbing document, right? But it was such a disturbing document. But there are two phrases, and they're both cliches, but there are two phrases that kind of come to mind. One being, you shouldn't be in politics unless you can take their money on Tuesday and vote against them on Thursday. And I believe that on the one hand, but that's an antiquated cliche because we know that you can't. Because from the minute you get elected, you immediately have to start fundraising. And as AOC has mentioned many, many times, the amount of time that a congressional nominee and even a sitting congressperson is expected to take out of their day to do fundraising and make phone calls. It's like most of your time spent after you're elected is in the process of continuing to get elected, is to not lose the amount of time that you have. So how much of the 2 years that you have as an elected official in Congress, how much of that time is actually spent trying to secure another 2 years or another 6 years? It's absolutely absurd. So there's that idea. And the other one is, I don't want to see, and I think it was another Sorkin quote, but I don't want to see anyone who goes to Congress or goes to the Senate because they think it's a good gig. People
yeah.
who do
That's
it.
not the purpose.
Yeah, I mean, we talk about career politicians, and let's face it, in Vegas, we don't have a professional legislature here,
No.
which is in many ways a bad thing. And I think
Mm-hmm.
the reason why it's such a bad thing is that it is not possible to get elected and have that be your job. You
Right.
always have to juggle what is the job that you're going to have, that you're leaving when the legislature is in session, and what
Mm-hmm.
is and are you going to be able to go back to that job? And it makes it so that unless you are in a profession that sees it as a badge of honor to have someone in their staff, like a legal firm, for example,
Mm-hmm.
sees it as a
Right.
badge of honor that one of their lawyers is out serving in the legislature, or you're independently wealthy or
Yeah.
self-employed,
Yeah.
or make your own way. It's really not feasible unless you have a spouse who can take over the burden, or if you're able to retire early, that to not only take the time to run for office, but also even take the time to serve in office. And that sort of segues, excuse me, that sort of segues into the next
Mm-hmm.
issue, which is that when you look at former Vice President Biden, and
Right.
to me, it's not even as much an electability issue. Although I think if the Democratic establishment pushes it through, and that's the nominee, which is far
Mm.
from a foregone conclusion at this point, as we'll talk
Right.
about in a bit.
Right. Right.
But if he is the nominee, not only do I not feel that he can beat Trump, because I think Trump will destroy him, um,
Mm.
but if by some miracle he's the nominee, well, a miracle would be Bernie being the nominee. But if
Right.
Biden winds up being the nominee, and by some
Mm.
twist of fate he becomes president,
Mm.
I don't think at this point that he is capable of
Mhm.
fulfilling the obligations of that job. It's
I
not even
agree.
just about
I
beating
agree.
Trump; it's about being able to do that. And I got to say,
Okay.
again, wait, do the elephant. Excuse me. Folks, I've actually every spring I get a sinus infection.
Oh,
I
that's
don't worry about
good.
me and my health. I'll be okay.
Okay. Good.
It's not the
To
dreaded
hear.
virus.
Mhm.
But the truth of the matter is, who then, if Biden is elected president,
Mm.
if we don't, you and I'm saying we, if we
Right.
don't feel that he's capable of fulfilling the job, of fulfilling the commitments of the job,
Mm.
then my question is, who is actually a vote for Biden? Who is that
Right.
actually a vote for? Because if
Right.
he is actually compromised to the degree that he cannot really fulfill the obligations of the presidency, should he be
Right.
elected, who is it
Right.
that we're actually voting for? Who is going to take up that slack? And it's more
Right.
than just,
Good point.
who is he going
Right.
to have for a VP? And I don't say that to be mean in any way. I have, one of my grandparents, unfortunately passed away to due to Alzheimer's. So I've seen how that goes, and it's awful, and I wouldn't wish it on
Yeah.
anybody.
I agree.
But not only
I
that, they talk about Biden stuttering. Some of you know, some of you don't know.
Mhm.
While I am not credentialed to work in the private sector, privately as a speech language pathologist, I am credentialed through the Department of Education. So what I do as my day job is I work as a speech language therapist or speech language pathologist for the school district. Now that is,
Nice.
full disclosure, that is the only pediatric speech pathology within the schools under a licensure through the Department of Ed is the only way in which I can practice speech pathology, and I'm okay with that
Mhm.
because I don't want to
Right.
work with adults
Right.
primarily, and
Right.
I have other career things going on. But the fact of the matter is, based on my experience as a speech language therapist, the issues that Biden is facing, the gaffes that he's having, it is very clear
Oh, yeah.
when he has a stuttering moment, a moment that would be expected from a person who stutters, and
Which is
from
fine.
when he is having a scenario that is not that. And
Mm.
things like his difficulty with the Constitution of the United States,
Yeah.
with some of the
The
ideas
thing.
that he
The
says.
thing. Yeah.
Stuttering absolutely has a huge spectrum, but a lot of these issues that we see with Biden are not stuttering issues. Just point blank, they're not stuttering
No,
issues.
I absolutely agree with you. And honestly, like, I mean, this is my opinion. If you vote for Biden, you're committing elder abuse. That's my
Ouch.
I mean, from what I've seen, it looks like elder abuse. You're participating in elder abuse. That's what it looks like to me. As soon as I seen him in like one of the speeches, he went ahead and he said, "I'm Joe Biden and I'm running for the United States Senate." I was like, what the? I mean, this is not something that we should wish upon everyone to try to feel sorry for somebody. You know, he should be with his family. He's a very, I mean, he's done what he could throughout his years, but it just feels like to me it's elder abuse. I mean, I'm going to be straight up. I mean, that's why I feel so horrible about this because I don't think he needed to go through this. And even Obama said, Joe, you really don't have to do this. I mean, and there was a reason, you know, and I'm sure that we'll be finding out about that later, you know, what's going on. But I really feel, I mean, it honestly looks like elder abuse to me.
Yeah, I
You
mean,
know,
and I don't want to come across as a negative individual. I mean, I don't mean for
I feel
progressive
bad to
voice.
say that.
Sure.
Even for me, I feel horrible. I feel horrible to say that.
Yeah.
But I mean, when I seen that, I was just like, oh my God. I mean, he should be enjoying his time with his family. That's what I feel.
Yeah,
You
and
know?
I don't. Again, it's not my intention to go on, piling on in any way attacking Vice President Biden. I mean, the fact of
No,
the
I
matter.
don't
No,
want
I hear what you're saying, B.
just
I mean,
yeah.
I'm just
As
saying that
progressive people, you know, we can't help it. We're compassionate toward people.
absolutely,
So when we
and
see something, we can't help it. Yeah.
and again, Biden. In the video that I posted last week up on our YouTube channel. One
Right.
of the things that I mentioned was that, I showed a clip of a Biden interview that he gave before Obama's State of the Union.
In
Yeah,
2016.
his last State of the
In
Union in
2016,
2016.
he was fine.
Totally.
If that was the, I wouldn't say this.
Yeah.
I would not say
I
this.
still wouldn't
Yeah.
agree with his policies if he were still
Oh
running
no,
the same
no.
policies.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't
agree.
have
I
I
agree.
wouldn't have the concerns that I have about his ability to do the job.
Right.
That President Joe Biden, that Vice President Joe Biden was not the same
Mm-hmm.
candidate that candidate Joe Biden is now. But
Right.
I want to jump
Yeah.
on a little bit so that we're not so much on the anti anybody train. I don't want to really be on the anti train, although pointing out these things I kind of feel is it's our duty as citizens to discuss things openly.
Mhm.
And we so often do not discuss things openly. But
Right.
on
Totally
the
agree.
pro Bernie train here for a minute, just to set the record straight, we're a little more than halfway through the primary, but we're
Right.
only a little more than halfway through the primary. Now, yeah, Florida looks bad for him. I grew up in
Right.
South Florida. Okay, I had experience with any number of people of the South Florida Cuban American community, some of which I went to school, some of which are my dear friends. I'm not trying to cast aspersions over an entire group of people. I certainly would not do that. However, I do know that a lot of folks in that population will not vote Democrat, period. So we know that
It'll be a hard.
it'll be a hard state for any Democrat to win overall.
Yes. Without a doubt.
Bernie's comments about Castro, whether or not they were the same comments that Obama made, which they are.
Right.
Um,
Right. Oh, identical.
yeah, they're identical comments talking about the
Yeah.
same things.
Yep.
Despite that truth, they are problematic even with Democrats in Florida, particularly South Florida. Another demographic that we also have to recognize is the fact that so much of Florida, I grew up in, I'm Jewish by heritage, and what do you say? Where do old New York Jews go to retire? And the answer is South Florida. So, so much of the South Florida population and all the way up into Central Florida are also older folks, baby boomers, for lack of a better term. So when you look at it all together, between your Cuban American population who does not want to vote for a Democrat at all, and certainly does not want to vote for a potential Democratic nominee who has praised Castro, regardless of the justification for those statements. They hear it's a dog whistle. I mean, they hear that, and that's all they hear. They don't want to hear what comes after that. They just hear that.
Right.
And so there's a large population, and Florida does not look good for Bernie.
No.
But there are other states that vote or that have yet to vote that are not Florida. There are some in the South where Bernie has historically done less well, although there is progress. But what I wonder about is how, like, you got Clyburn. Why the rush? That's what causes me to question. Why the rush?
Right.
We already see Trump sort of posting ads and whatnot that are the same criticisms that we have. You don't hush up a criticism just because the other side, in this case Republicans or Trumpisms, the Trump Republicans, it's not like they don't see the same things that we see. So to pretend that we don't see them is not going to make them go away. So
absolutely,
the truth of the matter is, pointing out these differences, and Bernie prefaces any criticism of Joe Biden. It's my friend Joe Biden, and then we get the criticism, and if you watch independent media, you watch progressive media. I mean, ad nauseum, you hear people talking about Bernie's strategy, and I don't work for the campaign. I know that Truck Rocha and there are smart people working on his campaign that and smart strategists, but Bernie's going to be Bernie, and he's going to do. And
he's a nice guy.
One of the things that we love about Bernie is that he's authentic.
I mean, you can't change that. I mean, it is what it. And even for me, sometimes I'm like, oh, don't say that. Like, I think the bigger one was when you said that, oh, Biden can beat Trump. That was a mistake. That was a big mistake.
Well, at that point, the bell that everyone's trying to ring is this unity bell. And one of the attacks on Bernie consistently, and I know I'm going to go out on a limb by saying this, but one of the attacks consistently on Bernie has been he's not a real Democrat. And my thing is, no, Bernie actually is a real Democrat. Where's the rest of the party? Because I'm trying to understand what this party that calls themselves Democrat actually is. Because the center of the Democratic Party, as we talked about a little bit ago, is really where Bernie is. So my question is, who are the rest of these people with a D in front of their name? The real Democrat that I'm seeing is Bernie. And as Kyle has talked about, and we're talking about Kyle Kulinski, who has another independent media show. One of the things Kyle points out is, let's talk about who the actual electable candidate is. And, as I posted on social media, and sometimes I wonder, you throw something out there. It's one of the great things about this live stream that we can do and continue to do is you can hear a person's actual tone of voice. Because when we throw things out there into the void of social media, very often people can misinterpret what you're saying, and I work very hard for that not to happen with me. But some people just don't care. Some people just throw it out there, and there it is.
They'll do it anyway.
Yeah, they'll do it anyway. It doesn't matter. Nonetheless, one of the things that I mentioned is, they talk about Bernie being the safe choice, and to me, if you have to find ways to prop up your candidate.
Yes.
And make sure that we don't see certain things. So, for example, if Joe Biden is of either failing health and or failing mental acuity, having him sit behind a desk at the debate because he has difficulty standing for that amount of time, having the format be such that it's easier for him not to forget what he's talking about or stay on track. All of these concessions to try and sort of cover up for the difficulties that Biden has as a candidate, all that illustrates is that you have a weak candidate. Because, I mean, you have Bernie. And just as a comparison, Bernie has more energy than
Oh my
any of
God.
the younger competitors that he was running against.
Well, he makes Pete Buttigieg look old.
Yeah, exactly. You cannot keep up with Bernie, and he's
Yeah.
sharp as a tack, and he's older than Biden. So, right now, no one's talking about age because, well, how can you? You've got two guys sort of within a year of each other, both running. The one who
Pretty
is
much.
younger looks 10 years older than the one who's actually
Yeah.
older, and
I mean, honestly, I feel Biden looks even older than that. To be honest with you, I mean, Bernie looks like as if he's like what's his age? Maybe like 78, going on 39. You know?
sure, yeah. I mean,
You
I have
know?
a roommate who is
Mhm.
elderly, a renter, and
Right.
he even said to me,
Mhm.
we cable news is on. He watches cable news
Mhm.
all day, every day. He's retired. He's at home most of the time, and he watches a lot of cable news. And even he said to me, looking at Biden, he's like, he just looks old. And this is coming from an old
Mm.
dude. This is coming from
Yeah.
a 73-year-old dude. He's like, he
Wow.
looks so old. And Bernie kind of looks the same, but Biden has aged sort of over the past 4 years. And
Oh,
when you
no.
have to change rules, when you have to readapt something like a
Mhm.
debate in order to cover up the failings of your candidate, failing health, failing acuity. When you have to do those things, all that displays is that you have a weak candidate, and it should tell a logical person
Pretty much.
or a person who is not invested in the money train of the Beltway
Right.
bubble in the consultant class.
Right.
All that tells you is your candidate is not the strongest candidate to go against this horror show
Oh my God.
of,
Oh my God. Yeah.
politicizing
Yeah.
that you're going to be
Yeah.
facing. And,
Yes.
I look at it, and now granted, we've made no bones about who we support in the election. I've been a Bernie supporter for a long time now,
Yes.
and vocally.
Mhm.
But I look at it and I'm like, how can you not see this? And the answer is, it is not in our financial interest
Right.
or our power
Right.
base interest.
I mean,
to see.
if you really look, honestly, Adam, the way that they're setting it up, they really don't care if Biden loses. To be honest with you, they don't care if. I mean, that's what the DNC is propping up. They're saying that he's the one who can beat Trump, and even if Trump wins or if Trump loses, they don't care as long as it's not Bernie. That's their biggest thing, because they know if Bernie was there, it would hurt their structure of how they do, their interesting dealings. I'll call them interesting, even though I think you get the message.
Sure. Folks, don't forget, I just want to
So-
jump in here for a second. Y'all, those of you who are following us on social media, there's around 10 of you right now. I see that people are thumbs upping and hearting and all that other stuff, and that's great. But don't forget, you can comment. I mean, if you
Yes,
post us up a
please
comment,
do.
we
Yes.
can go ahead and share that or respond to it, as you see fit. You
Right.
can comment. You are a part of this conversation as we move forward
Mm-hmm.
in this process. Again, depending if school is shut, if school is not shut. I mean, now that we're set
Right.
up, we will be live streaming a bit more. I may even be able to convince B if he's done when he's done self quarantining.
Yes, yes.
To come on up and sit here in front of our lovely green screen with me.
Exactly.
But it's great that we can go ahead and share this time. But we're sharing this time with you on Facebook right now, live, and you can comment. And if you have something to share, please do comment. I'm surprised that so
Right.
many of the people who I know who may be watching this, and I'm not entirely sure who is watching this right now.
Right. Right.
But those of you who are, I'm kind of surprised that nobody who is watching this has actually chimed in yet. So feel free to
Okay.
do so. I mean, we're here for you.
Please do.
One of the things that we're trying to do this evening as we move into our second hour is that this is a very isolating time. It's a very scary time
It is.
for so many of us. And as people self-quarantine, as people maintain social separation to try and avoid getting sick and staying, and to try and promote staying healthy, we are already living in a time of great isolation.
Exactly.
We're living in a time of great isolation, and in very few places do isolation quite the way that Vegas does isolation. And this is sort of a non-political topic that I'm broaching here for a minute. But I mean, we live in Vegas, which is an incredibly isolating town. My house, the way that my house is laid out, my master bedroom is about 100 feet, 150 feet from the master bedroom of my neighbor, to my left. And I don't know if this is showing as left to you guys, but it's showing as left to me. But we sleep like 150 feet from each other, and yet we don't really know each other. We live in a city where the city has grown in a modern time, so many things are packed together, and yet at the same time we don't know each other. We don't know our neighbors. If you caught some of the live stream that I did when we had our caucuses, I mentioned that I was like panning out with my phone, and I'm like, yeah, we don't have that many people, but I don't know who to expect in my precinct because I don't actually know who my neighbors are.
Exactly.
We don't know our neighbors. But in this time that is already so isolating, the idea that we would purposefully and further isolate ourselves from each other and self-quarantine to the fact that unless someone has a job that requires them to go to people's houses, you can it's every day it's like less and less traffic. And when I was at work at the school yesterday, it was so quiet. The first thing that I noticed, I said to a coworker of mine, I was walking from the main office toward my office, and I said, wow, is it just me or does it seem really quiet today? And she was like, yeah, it seems really quiet today. And we had a lot of kids in school, absolutely. But I was surprised at how many kids we had in school. And I think if we do, here in Clark County, if our schools are open, the public schools, I know out here pretty much all of the private schools are closed now. But if the public schools remain open, and I say that as a big if, because it's looking more and more likely that some of that will change.
I think they're going to be closing down. They're probably going to. It's almost getting there.
Yeah, I can only convey. I don't want to convey misinformation, and that's like the last thing I want to do. I can only feel comfortable commenting on what I may have heard around the water cooler or what we've heard directly from the superintendent or the school board. And at this point, we got an email not too long ago, shortly before I was getting the live stream set up, from the superintendent saying that school will be open. And
well, that's a good thing.
Yeah. But it's scary too. I mean, the fact is,
It is.
I went through the checklist and whatnot when I got sick at the beginning of this week, and just to be sure, I stayed home 3 days out of this week, and did the whole MD live thing where I went on like internet and talked to a doctor, and he said, well, let's go through the checklist. And we went through the checklist, and he said, yeah, you're right, it's a sinus infection, the same one you get every year, and that's fine. I mean, it sucks, but it's not the dreaded virus. But my immune system is compromised because I'm fighting off this other infection. There are other. But I wanted to make sure that I wasn't spreading anything to anybody else, so I stayed home for 3 days, and then I went back.
Just being responsible.
Sure, it's just being responsible. Fortunately for me, although I don't have a lot of sick time accrued because of health issues in the past, I did have enough sick leave accrued to be able to take those 3 days and not worry about it. And I am in a financial position where I'm not terribly concerned about it. And although our health insurance changes, and sometimes it's like the worst health insurance in the world, but it seems to be getting a little bit better, although it's still not great, at least I do have some insurance.
Right.
But, so I feel fortunate in those respects. But the fact of the matter is, when we're talking about having the schools open, we're talking about a lot of staff and a lot of people who are at risk. And so I want to send out my kudos to anyone who does work in the school district, educators, etc. If you are, and I'm one of you, but if we are going to work, I know, and hopefully other people know, that you are putting other people before yourselves, and you are putting yourselves possibly in a dangerous situation by simply fulfilling the responsibilities of your job. Now, that may change We don't know how these things are going to pan out.
Right.
I heard word around the water cooler that maybe there will be a pause on school until after spring break. I don't know. I'm not reporting that. I'm not saying that is what's going to happen. But what I am saying is, at this time, public schools, Clark County School District will be open on Monday, but that could change tomorrow. I could get off of this live stream, in 45 minutes to an hour, depending on if we go over. But I could get off this live stream and see another email and find out that that's changed. I mean, things are going on a minute-to-minute basis.
In California, just to let you know, I have friends who live in California. Their schools are closed. So, and I was like, whoa, it was pretty surprising. So, basically, they're working at home now. Most of the people.
Sure. And I don't know how we're set up here. Sorry about that. Noisy chair. I don't know how we're set up here. I know that I, for one, obviously, whoa, out of focus. That was weird. Obviously, I'm doing this live stream. So clearly, I have a setup where if I needed to provide therapy from home, I could do that. If I needed to meet with my colleagues from home, I could do that. I don't know if Clark County School District overall is set up to teach classes virtually. My guess is if we had to take time, if they did wind up closing schools either on Monday or after Monday, and have schools closed until after spring break, which is really only a couple weeks away. So that sort of gives us a week cushion there that we're already in spring break. So if they were to do that, my guess is they would be looking at all kinds of options to make up that time. I don't think that salaries would be affected. My guess is that they would just have us go longer into the summer, or find some way after that. But again, if you're just sort of jumping on this live stream, schools are open on Monday in Clark County, as far as I know. And I'm talking about public schools, because I know the private schools have all basically made the decision not to do that. But private schools are set up differently. They have different options for virtual classrooms than perhaps Clark County does. But, again, if you have a thought, if you want to comment on whether you think schools should stay open or not, please go ahead and hit us up in the comments. And Bee, I know you work at home already, so you're kind of it's
the same for me.
Yeah, so it doesn't really change much where you're concerned, because you already work from home. But what do you? And I know you don't have kids, but I mean, what are your thoughts? I mean, just as a person in this world, what are your thoughts with regard to schools being open?
I think right now we should probably, see if this. I mean, first thing that we need to do is we need to get testing. Okay, here in Nevada. I mean, I don't know what's going on with our present government, but we should have had this a long time ago, just to see what the heck's going on, and then make sure that we quarantine people, because there's a lot of people who are from California who live here in Nevada, and California, there's been already a whole bunch of cases, and then same with like Oregon and Washington State. So I think there may. Have you heard of any over here in Nevada at all?
Testing
any cases?
Locations?
Yeah, no, any cases of corona here in Nevada?
I have.
You have?
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. See, we need to get more of that testing to make sure anyone that they touched or whatever is also tested. I mean, and that's the thing. That's the thing that's scary about this coronavirus, is that it's really. I mean, I heard that it does have flu-like symptoms. Like for people like us, it's not a big deal. It's only really people who are over 70. Those are the ones that it's lethal.
Well, too. Yeah, people over 70 and people with compromised immune systems. That's one of the dangers about, like, if you're kind of in my situation earlier this week, if you are already, if you're already fighting something off, if you're already fighting off a bug or a virus or something, even if it's not, even if it's not coronavirus. I mean, fighting off anything is going to cause your immune system to work overtime. But if you have diabetes, other health conditions, those are really kind of our biggest at-risk factors. I'm not going to repeat some of the things that I saw online from some millennials about Actually, I guess I am kind of repeating it, so I apologize. I don't mean to offend anyone, but they're kind of
It's okay.
talking
Go
about
ahead.
how this illness is striking a certain demographic of our voting
Oh,
community. Um,
no,
I
no, no. We shouldn't think that way. We
We
shouldn't
shouldn't,
think that way. No,
and
no.
I'm
A
not.
life is a life.
No, go ahead. What were you
You know.
saying, B?
No, no. A life is a life. So it
Right.
doesn't matter. Let's leave politics and all this stuff out of it. This is about people's
Yeah,
lives.
this is,
You
and
know.
this,
So
and you know what?
yeah.
A virus, whatever that virus
Hmm.
may be, really does not care if you have a D or an R in front
Yeah.
of your name. It doesn't care
They don't care.
what generation you're in.
Yeah.
The
Yeah.
real risk factors or people at risk for this illness right now are the elderly people,
Yes.
the very young, not like,
Hmm.
but like infants, and those who are already having other illnesses or a compromised
Right.
immune system. Um,
Right.
but we also don't really know how voraciously this thing spreads. Um,
Right.
we don't
I mean,
know. We don't really know enough. I
yeah.
mean, that's really what it
Yeah.
comes down to because
Yeah.
China
It does.
kept a lid on
Hmm.
this or tried to keep a lid on this for so long.
Right.
We're still discovering things about this. And I certainly don't want to alarm anyone. But,
Right.
you could be at a risk factor and not really know you're at a risk factor because how do you
You know,
know if
you
you've
have
already
it.
got a bug, if you're one of those
Right.
people who soldiers on? And I could raise a ruckus about sick leave with the school district about
Hmm.
how insufficient it really is for emergency situations and how insufficient our health insurance is for real emergencies. Unfortunately for me, I've been I've experienced both of those things firsthand. And but the fact is, you know, there are so many out there who have no recourse if they lose their job. I mean,
Right.
I grew up. Many of you know I grew up in the arts. So many of my friends are in the arts on both sides of the camera
Hmm.
or either side of the stage. And
Right.
how does that impact people? I mean, I care very much about my friends and my family. My I had an experience. I received information from my alumni association.
Mm.
Some of you know I went to New World School of the Arts in Miami, the High School of Performing Arts. It's also
Nice.
the it's also the conservatory program for University of Florida for their
Mm.
Bachelor of Fine Arts program, and a lot of great
Really?
people have gone there. I'm not a name dropper. If you're seeing me, hi guys.
Nice.
Class of 1991, rock on.
Right.
But so many of those people who have careers in the arts. My sister
Mm.
being one of them. I know that she's been working on a couple of shows. She's a stage manager. I know that now those shows are canceled, and she is a member of a union. But
Right.
as a stage manager, she's a member of Actors Equity. But how that will impact her, and by extension, my niece and my family,
I mean,
if those things, those public
yeah.
areas of congregation, those entertainment
Right.
industry things, how is it going to impact the film industry if people aren't going to
Right.
movies? Now, is it going to be an uptick in streaming? I mean, political issues aside, this thing is
Yes.
so broad reaching that we don't know how
Mhm.
it's going to impact anybody in any given industry. Just a funny note, or at least what I find is a funny note. Many of you know I am also, now that I've got everything set up to do broadcasting from home.
Mhm.
And hopefully it looks good. Hopefully it sounds good. Throw us a thumbs up, send
Yeah.
us a comment. Um, but on my author channel, I'm going to be doing a bunch of booktubing, and I had planned that anyway. But I was trying to figure out which book to start with, and some of you may find this funny. The first book that comes to mind, I'm like, what should I do for the first book? Because I'm going to do it this week sometime, and particularly if I'm off work, I'm definitely going to do it this week.
Mm.
Excuse me. And so I'm thinking about doing The Stand by Stephen King,
Mm. Nice.
which,
Nice.
if you've read it or if you've seen, and then I thought, is that just too twisted? So if you have a
No, no,
comment
no.
about,
I think that's an amazing movie. I mean, like I think I seen I think I seen it when it was on TV. I think they had a TV version of it, but I was like a little kid when I watched it, and I was like, whoa, it was a little freaky.
Yeah, there was a miniseries. There's another TV show that's in the works. But the reason I bring it up is this. I don't know.
Maybe this is the stand.
Yeah, no, I'm not saying maybe this is the stand, and this is clearly not
God.
Captain Trips.
Right.
But I was like thinking, I'm like going, okay, too soon. I mean, that's the first thing. I like looked at my dog because I talk to my dogs often, and I looked over at Obie, and I'm sitting there writing down notes to possibly do a podcast about the stand, and I'm look at Obie, I'm like, too soon. He didn't have an answer for me.
Let's not go that far.
He didn't have an answer for me. And we all certainly haven't been isolated enough for me to actually expect my dog to have an answer for me.
Right.
But I'm like, I kind of want to do it because it seems appropriate, but at the same time, I don't know if it's appropriate. So y'all leave a comment. If not, I may just plug ahead with this, and then you can be mad at me later. You had something?
A quick thing. I don't think I answered your question about like if they should close schools and everything. My personal opinion is we need to do it based on if people can still get compensated. If they're not like the people who are at work and they can't because of their kids, they need to be taken care of.
Sure.
So we need to make sure that that's taken care of. And I just want to give if we can do that, I think we should like start quarantining a little bit more until we get more tests and get this thing situated. And because right now China's got it under control. So we need to get to China's level and South Korea's level of control right now, because I think oh, go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just letting somebody know that I'm on the air. That's all.
Oh, okay, got it. Yeah. I think we need to get to that South Korean level, because they were able to have drive-by, tests for people, so they can just come over, get the test, and then they find out, and then they can move forward. And then you can quarantine the people who actually have it, and make sure that they get through everything. So I think we need to get to that step.
Yeah, I mean, and you're absolutely right. I mean, at this point, we do not have a convenient or secure way for people to even know if they have this thing.
If they have it, yeah, exactly.
And in Nevada, and again, if you don't recognize the background, this is coming to you from North Las Vegas.
Las Vegas.
Yeah. Lost wages, even more so soon.
Yeah,
for a totally different reason.
Oh, I wanted to say one thing real quick. Shout out to Tulsi Gabbard for trying to get that $1,000 a month for everybody over here during this time. I wanted to make sure that people realize. I mean, she's amazing. She's just like Bernie. She thinks about the people. So I just wanted to give a shout.
It's no secret. I adore Tulsi, and
me.
Yeah, she's paying the price, man. She is paying the price for disloyalty. If any of you are wondering why the Democratic Party has been so negative on Tulsi Gabbard from the beginning, why corporate media has been so negative on Tulsi Gabbard from the beginning, you can have. I would encourage you to please, before you want to shout out a negative about Tulsi. Before you want, if you have a policy discrepancy with her that's part of her actual policies, then by all means, share that information. That's
fair game.
But totally, if it's based on what you're getting from corporate media, this, and again, I mentioned Tulsi in my my YouTube video from not too long ago. It's last week, but with coronavirus, everything seems to be for so long ago. But the truth is that she's such an incredibly genuine person, and you don't have to agree with her. You don't have to do anything, but even if you don't agree with her, I think it's important that everybody know. If you have met her, if you have seen her live, if you have seen her speak directly. You don't have to agree with what she says, but you should give the respect to recognize that she is genuine and she believes what she says, and she speaks from the heart. And you don't have to agree necessarily with where that leads her, but it is worthy of respect that that where it leads her is coming from the heart. And she is still in this race, by the way, ladies and gentlemen. I mean,
Yes.
sometimes I think, yes, she is definitely the
There's a
toughest
woman in this
candidate
race.
out there.
There is a woman in this race. Yes.
I mean, she's definitely the toughest candidate out there. And I think she could
Yes.
probably have beaten all of the candidates in push-ups put together. If bringing that Joe Biden, let's go outside and do push-ups. That would be worth the price of the price of
I just wanted to,
what you
sure.
call it. Now I did another
I just
Biden.
wanted to,
It's worth the price of admission. Yeah, it's worth the price of
There you
admission
go.
right there to see a push-up
there you
competition.
go. I just wanted to let you know, Bernie did win something. He won the Mariana Islands, so everybody remember that. He won 4 delegates from there recently, so just wanted to make sure everybody knew about that.
I just wanted to we did get a comment. Let's see if this works the way that it should.
Yeah.
Okay, so we got a comment from Justin Stewart that says, I have a problem with her policy, the Democratic part. Justin, I don't know what to tell you about that, but,
Well, I mean,
not everybody's a Democrat. I recognize that.
I would love to hear the policy dispute that he has. That would be good. I mean, it's good to have disputes on stuff, but I would like to know which one.
Well,
he's got
I think
issue with.
I hear what you're saying, but I think that was more of a Republican comment. And hey, if you're a Republican because that's where your policies lie, this is a democracy, and you have every right to,
absolutely.
to believe whatever you want.
Absolutely.
But I think what Justin was saying, I'll pop this up here again. Just because it's fun and I can, it allows me to just sort of show the comment in my broadcast right here.
Nice.
And what it's showing, I have a problem with the policy, the Democratic part. I think what he's saying is he's a Republican. But I don't know Justin personally,
okay,
so
got it.
I couldn't tell you. But I think it's a witticism, and good witticism on you, Justin.
Hey, props to you, man.
And you have every right to disagree with the idea of where Democratic politics are. Although, like we were saying earlier, I question how far left the Democratic politics actually are. Oh, my glasses.
Yeah.
How democratic politics are at this point. But nonetheless, thank you for commenting. I really appreciate it, Justin, because if nothing else, that showed us that the comment section does work. And you are our first comment of the night. So that and whatever bus fare is in your area will get you on the bus.
Right.
So, as to what you were saying with Tulsi, her policies are not in lockstep with Bernie's. But, my dream ticket from 2016 and my dream ticket remains, although I know that it will never happen, even if Bernie is the nominee.
I would love if she's VP.
Sanders Gabbard ticket would be my dream. And I know it's not everybody's dream. I recognize that. Yeah. And if you have reasons why and you want to shoot it up on the comments, we are equipped to share that with the world. But the fact is that mad props. I mean, she's hanging in there. And I don't think she will be the last one left standing, but this is going to sound incredibly off color, and I apologize for anyone who's offended before I even say this, but she is certainly the least likely to get the coronavirus of the Democratic candidates currently in the race. She is neither elderly nor is she in failing health. So. No, I know that Tulsi would not wish any illness on anyone, but so I say that as sort of gallows humor. But the fact of the matter is, mad props to Tulsi. She is still in the race. She is still doing her thing, and she should be. I mean, nobody. And this is good to circle us back around a little bit, in the sense that we talk about the race as it comes up and people leaving the race, and. I think there is nothing so undemocratic as asking or suggesting, as Clyburn did the other day, that we end the primary, that we don't have a debate. That is such a crock. And if you are trying to end the contest, and I say this to all you lovely neoliberal Democrats out there, those who are involved with the Democratic establishment, there is nothing so cowardly as trying to end a contest because you're afraid you are going to lose it.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, the fact
Right.
is, every American who wants to vote in this primary and registers as a Democrat in those states where it's required, or asks for a
Mm-hmm.
Democratic ballot in the states that have open primaries,
Right.
every state should have the chance to vote and have their voices heard
That's
before you
yeah,
even so much as raise the question of whether or
absolutely.
not the primary should be over. And trying to pressure Bernie to drop out of the race is a cowardly act too. It
Mm-hmm.
didn't work in 2016, and by whoever, I was going to say God willing, if you
Mm-hmm.
believe in God, that's great. If you believe in a higher power, that's great. By whatever higher power you believe in,
Mm-hmm.
um, I hope to whatever higher power you believe in, that the Democratic Party as a whole is not so cowardly as to keep pressuring Bernie to get out of the race before he has a chance to be a voice for the millions of Americans who have already chosen him as their representative, and the millions of Americans that
Mm-hmm.
still have the opportunity to do so and will.
Right. And just to add to that, I mean, Bernie himself, like, we still don't have all of the electoral, like all of the delegates assigned from California. It still hasn't been done yet.
Yeah.
So they're still counting in California, and I heard, this is just what I heard. I can't back this up fully, but in Texas there was some interesting things that's happening there. So I don't
Yeah.
know what's happening there fully. I think it's in the Dallas County area, is what I heard. But there is some more stuff that need to be added in. So there's a lot more that needs to be done. So I don't want anybody to think that, hey, this is totally wrapped up and done. I mean, there's still a chance. I mean, tomorrow is really our biggest thing.
Yeah.
It depends on how Bernie performs tomorrow, and if he just, I would like him to just go on policy, 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 and just hit on policy all the way through, and show that he is the most electable. And I mean, to both of us, he definitely looks like the most. He looks like the strongest candidate. When I seen him on the fireside chat, and that's what a president looks like to me.
See, I haven't.
You know,
Tell us a little bit about that.
yeah,
Let me adjust my chair here for a second.
yeah,
And tell
yeah.
us a little bit about that. I know that Bernie did a
Mm-hmm.
fireside chat. All the people,
Right.
the comparisons between Bernie and FDR, policy wise,
Yes.
comportment wise, etc. I mean, they're many, and they have been made over and over again. But
Yes.
Bernie did this thing, and that Bee is going to tell us about in a second. Bernie did this thing
Yeah.
today. He did a fireside chat, literally a fireside chat. He was there with
Yep.
Faz.
It was right next to a
Yeah,
fire.
and the two of them
Exactly.
were sitting there right next to everybody. I did see the beginning where Faz is like, "Okay, so is this a wood burning stove or a fireplace? What exactly is this?" But it
I
was
love Bernie's
literally,
response. He's like, "Why are you asking me these tough questions?"
yeah, right. It was literally a fireside chat.
uh,
And I have not had the opportunity because I was trying to get all the
right,
tech prepared for this
right,
live stream. So I have not
right.
had the opportunity to watch that. But maybe you could give us some. What did he talk about, B?
Yeah, I mean, the thing that I liked about what he said was like, "Hey, we need to take care of all of the people who, I mean, this is hurting them big time, because in the sense, like, hey, they need to miss work because they have to take care of their kids. And there are some people who need to get tested." He gave an actual plan of how we need to actually go ahead and get through this pandemic. And I did not see that from Joe Biden. I didn't see that from Trump. Was just horrendous. I mean, I don't know what the heck he was talking about most of the time, and he was sniffling through it. So I'm assuming that, I mean, I'm not trying to put in rumors, but I feel like as if maybe he's got it. So
Yeah,
I mean, from what I've seen, and especially since Bolsonaro came over to visit Trump and they touched hands and everything, and I think he also touched hands with the person who was tested positive
mhm.
from Brazil, who was actually over there. So the chances of Trump having it is pretty high.
And he
So
does fall. I mean, he is elderly,
oh, big
and
time,
he
big
is
time.
not in good
Big,
health.
oh
Um,
no, definitely not.
but
He's
yeah,
definitely really big. Yeah,
and
yeah.
he did not look when I saw him give his address. I'm
Mhm.
not spreading rumors at all, and we are
Right.
coming
Yeah,
into
neither
spring.
am I.
We
Right.
are coming into
But
spring, and let's be honest, we are coming to spring, which is allergy season for a lot of us who have
big
allergies. A
time,
miserable
big
time.
time. Yes.
But he didn't look terribly healthy when he gave his address either. Now you can blame the lighting, you can blame the makeup people. That's possibly the problem. But
Right.
Yeah, I mean, but what you were saying, I mean, just this fireside chat thing overall. What
Yeah. Oh.
I saw that it was there, and it
I
put
mean,
a big
you actually
smile.
seen a plan. You actually seen a plan. There was an actual plan of how we get out of this pandemic in a reasonable amount of time. I was like, that's what we need. If we can just follow Bernie's plan to get everybody quarantined, make sure that they don't have to worry about the monetary portion of this during this time, and then we go ahead and we get everybody tested. We don't charge anybody for the test, and we don't charge anybody for the actual fixing, like when they're going through whatever they're going through to get through it. So I mean, it just made so much common sense from like what his plan was, and I was just like, why isn't anybody else talking about this? Why are they nitpicking about, oh, how much money can we get from the test? How much money can we get for administering the fix and all this other stuff? I'm like, that shouldn't even be a thing. Right now, we should be worrying about people and making sure this pandemic is gone. That should be our objective, and he's the only one who actually talked about that. We need to get this done.
Yeah, it absolutely should not be like you're saying that profiting from this
Yeah, this is ridiculous.
should
Yeah.
absolutely not be a thing. And the one of it struck me when I saw that he was doing this, and
Yeah.
when I saw Bernie does fireside chat come up on
Yes.
my stream, whether it was
Yeah.
YouTube or Facebook, I think it was Facebook initially.
Right.
And thank you to whoever posted that, because I
Yeah.
made me aware of it. Um,
Right.
but I just got like a warm feeling inside, and it made me smile that
Oh,
that
totally.
he was doing
Totally
that. And
agree. Yes.
why is it? And this is a question that I ask, and why is it, at least in my view, that according to the Democratic establishment,
Yes.
the candidate that is less electable, why is he the only one that is actually acting like a president right now?
Yeah. Absolutely. Totally agree.
And I
Totally.
truly feel that when Bernie came out and did his response to the coronavirus a few days ago, and I watched Biden's too, and Biden's looked like a campaign speech to me, and Bernie's
Yeah.
looked
Pretty much.
presidential. My thing, and you can disagree, that's fine. Throw it up in the comments if you disagree, and
Please
and
do.
and we'll
Please.
we'll throw it on the screen. But the fact is,
Yeah.
to me, I saw Bernie's response, and I'm like, this is the only person who's looking presidential right now.
Right.
And because to me, that's what I want in a president. I want a president who is going to talk directly to the people, not vet necessarily what he's going to say, but he's going to talk directly to the people, and he's going to say, yeah, this sucks. This is where we are.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
these are the steps that we need to take
Right.
to move forward and take care of our people. And,
Mhm.
nothing, this, the political strategist in me has a hard time not thinking that this crisis right now is the exact perfect indicator of why we need Medicare for all, of why we need
Absolutely.
paid family leave. I mean, so many of
Yes.
Bernie's policies are in stark relief as to why we need them based on our current situation. And the political strategist in me is like, I want to not think that way. I want to not think that way. But recognizing that truth and thinking of it as an opportunity are two very different things.
Right.
And
Right.
and they very much are different things. And he, it's sad that this is happening and showing in a very clear light why these things are necessary. But I honestly believe that even if these weren't necessarily all of Bernie's policies already, that this is still the direction that we need to go in as a country,
Oh, absolutely.
to deal with
Absolutely.
this
Oh.
to deal with this crisis. Unfortunately, we are not at a point where we were prepared to deal with this crisis because these policies have not been enacted.
Yep. Yep.
But
Exactly.
it to see him up there today. He was up there the other day saying, this is what we need to do in response. This is the response that we need to have.
Right.
And then he gave another speech yesterday in which he said many of the same things, but also talked about the political contest and the debates coming up and the election,
Right.
and the primaries. And he did that. And then he did He did the fireside chat this evening, and when I
Right.
was, and again, I haven't watched all of the fireside chat, and that's much more bare bones. I
Mhm.
mean, it's Bernie and Foz on chairs in front of a camera without even as much tech as I've got going right now on this
Right.
podcast,
Right.
just
Exactly.
talking to the people, and
You gotta love Bernie,
you
man.
do just
You gotta love.
talking about things,
Right.
and that's what, and Bernie talking directly to the American people.
Right.
And the fact of the matter is, that's what I want in my president. That's what I want from my president. That type of thing. If Bernie were president, I can only imagine that fireside chat would have been aired on major networks, or they at least would have alluded to it. Um, and I look at that, and that to me, I'm like, that's
Mhm.
presidential. And if you look, I
Oh,
mean,
without a doubt.
you know,
Without a doubt.
as we'd mentioned, I mean, we mentioned Kyle Kalinski's before. We mentioned Rising. We mentioned TYT. I mean, looking at
Mhm.
all these things, one of the things that I heard from them
Oh,
is when,
also Jimmy Dore.
Jimmy, can't forget Jimmy.
Yes. Can't forget Jimmy Dore.
Um, but looking at those things, I found myself kind of struck by something that Kyle said, something that I saw on TYT, which talked about Joe Biden's response, and that it lacked real substance, and it seemed like a sales pitch, because he's like, go to joebiden.com. But aside from that, they're like, but his production values were so much better. And I'm like, I don't care right now about that. You're trying to,
I want a plan.
I want a plan. Exactly.
I want a plan. I want to get out of this.
Yeah, it's like,
Give me a plan.
yeah, that's great. They put him on a podium that looks like he's talking from the East Room of the White House. That's lovely.
That's
But
fine.
what did he actually
But
have
I
to
want-
say?
Where's the meat? Where's the meat? Where's the substance?
I mean, if you want to be true, like, yeah, from back when we were kids, where's the beef, right? Going back, if you really want to be accurate in terms of a presidential candidate who's totally concerned about their failing health, put him, shoot it like in stark relief from a bunker somewhere, like 50 feet underground the lawn, like a stark room. And Bernie's was a little closer to that, I admit. He was shooting from Vermont, and I get the way that they did the flags and whatever. It didn't seem like a sweeping commercial, as it were. But to me, I'm not looking for flash right now. Although, hey, Bernie,
I want to
you
get
could
out
use
of
a
this
little more
pandemic.
flash. Yeah, you could use a little more flash. But how about we talk about what we're going to do to allow, so that we don't have a Great Depression brought about by illness.
Right.
I mean, I would love to not see the economy of the United States. And when I'm talking about the economy, I'm talking about real people, not just talking about the stock market. How are people going to put food on their tables? I mean, this is also bringing out the worst in people. I was at Sam's the other day, and granted, people, I have one of those faces, I guess. I have one of those faces that makes people mad. I don't know. But I was in Sam's.
I didn't know about this.
And there's like the line. I mean, the line is like the front of the store. And yes, I know it's Walmart, and if I'd have voted if I could. But the front of the line is at the front of the store. And just for self-checkout, like the line is like all the way to the back of the store.
Oh, my God.
And I happened to sort of squeeze by, and before I even go, this woman's like, you might as well go all the way around because I'm with this man. And I'm like thinking, okay, that's nice. I'm like, but I don't need to get to the front. I just need to get to this aisle here, right? So I turn my cart, and I happen to tap her cart with my cart, like the wheel or something. And before I even had the chance.
Like a very small.
Yeah. And it's not like we're driving. It's not like these are automobiles.
Right.
And it's not like I ran into this woman, right? But but I'm a nice guy, so before I even finished turning to apologize for tapping her cart, she went off on me, like calling me everything but my own name. And so I know the lady's not watching, but ma'am, if you are watching, I'm so sorry for tapping your cart and not apologizing, as quickly as would have made you comfortable. But the fact is that, I mean, it is bringing out the absolute worst in people as well, because people are scared. People are
Hmm.
scared, and they're not just scared of getting sick. They're scared of what's going to happen with their jobs. They're scared of what's going to happen with their
Well,
kids.
also not exactly. Yeah, and this all comes down to the fact that, oh, excuse me, this all comes down to the fact people don't have like what is it, $400 emergency?
Yeah,
That's the biggest thing. I mean, we got to realize that the reason why people are freaking out is because of that. They don't want to lose because they're going every day. It's a paycheck to paycheck life that they're going through, and we got to be cognizant of that. And really, the only person who addressed all of those issues were really out of Bernie's.
yeah,
He's the only one who actually talked about that. Nobody else talked about that plan
no.
of how we're going to make sure that people don't panic too much. That's the thing.
People need security.
Exactly. And one thing I noticed was, like, I went to Walmart today.
Bad.
Pasta is gone. Yeah, pasta and rice are gone. Like, all the shelves for pasta and rice gone. I was like in shock. I was like, whoa. But there was other stuff that was there, but those were gone. I was like,
Yeah,
whoa.
I mean, and the thing is, I mean, I stocked up when I was out yesterday. Again, the canned goods were gone from Sam's.
Right. Got it.
Any of the grocery stores that I've been to, I mean, pretty much canned goods have been gone.
Yeah.
But I was able to find frozen stuff, and I
Oh,
don't
good.
expect the power grid to go down. At least,
Yeah,
you
yeah.
know,
I think we'll be fine. I think it's just the people who have kids and they need to stay home and now they won't get paid. They're the ones that are really in trouble. We need to make sure that they're taken care of during this crazy time. And really, the only other person who talked about it was Bernie and Tosi, right, by trying to put the legislation through
right,
to make sure that people
basic
get at
income.
least just until this time frame is over, until this pandemic is over. I mean, it's nice to see public servants acting like public servants,
Sure.
which is
And
kind of a
I want
yeah,
to mention
right,
also. I mean, you were talking about UBI for a second, and
right.
this isn't exactly on UBI. And I'm realizing every time I need to itch something, I'm like,
Yeah,
keep
yeah.
your hands
Don't
away
touch
from
your
your
face.
face.
Don't touch your face.
Right.
Don't touch your face.
Um, but just to jump on for a second, the fact that as soon as this happened, the first thing that this current administration does is try and put forth a stimulus package to aid Wall Street.
1.5 trillion
1.5
came out
trillion
of
dollars,
nowhere.
and yeah, of course, on the
Let's get
feeds
that
that
1.5 trillion.
yeah, and on the
Yeah.
feeds that we're on, I mean, of course, we see like 101 memes about 1.5 trillion dollars to bail out
How are you
Wall
gonna
Street. How are you going to pay
pay
for
for
it, right?
it?
And we
Yeah.
see that
Yeah.
all over the place, and it's yes, it makes people feel a little better to vent about
Right.
that inconsistency. But the truth of the matter is, like UBI, the first thing you're going to hear is where are you going to find that money? And I have said this over and over again.
Where did we find the
How about the
1.5?
taxes that you've been paying your entire life? I mean,
Right.
and really, if nothing else about the Bernie agenda that I want to make clear, and there are many things I'd like to make clear about the
Mm.
policies, but really, what we're talking about is not a reallocation of wealth from one person to another. What we're talking
Right.
about is a change in philosophy, a paradigm shift in the
Mhm.
taxes that we pay going to give corporate welfare, or the taxes that we pay going to provide goods and services to the people who are actually paying those taxes. I mean,
Exactly.
that's really what it comes down to. And if you ask where are we going to pay for it, how about the taxes I've been paying my entire well, actually, since I was a kid,
Exactly.
the taxes I've been
Exactly.
paying. We don't have a state income tax here in Nevada, but I've been paying federal income tax since as long as I've had enough money to have to pay federal income tax.
Mhm.
And the fact is, that's where the money's coming from. The money that I have paid my government to take care of the goods and services to provide
Right.
us as a nation. Because, I could go all Schoolhouse Rock on y'all.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
maybe in another video somewhere along the line, I'll add a clip from Schoolhouse Rock
Right.
on where we pay
Right.
taxes and why. I believe it's the Taxman Max video
Yeah. There you go.
where they're talking about, why do we pay taxes and what do we get for them? But the
Mhm.
fact is, we pay our taxes, and really the people, the middle class, the lower middle class, and the people in poverty, we have been paying taxes, even in the form of sales tax. We pay taxes, even if we don't pay income tax. Every time we buy something, we pay tax on it.
Right.
And now even on the internet, when we buy something, we pay tax on it. So
Exactly.
that money goes to the government, and that money is supposed to be there because by pooling the resources together, the government is able to have purchasing power to handle these things on our behalf. Well, we've been paying into it, and these things have not been taken care of on our behalf by our government.
Right.
And I'm not advocating overthrow of the government. I'm advocating overthrow of the administration so that the government actually does what we pay it taxes to do. And this is the time when we could really use FEMA to be viable and working right.
Yes.
This is the time when we could really
use... This is
use...
a great time for FEMA.
Yes.
Great time for FEMA.
And this is the time where we could actually... I was going to be sarcastic and say, I don't know, do this. But, I don't know, maybe have our National Guard serving at home like they enlisted to do?
That sounds good to me.
You know, maybe that would be a good time.
Let's do things for the people. That sounds like what public service is about.
Sure. And being a person who lived in Miami during Hurricane Andrew.
Right.
And, I mean, that may seem like ancient history to a lot of people, but when I started as an educator full-time, the students that I had been little itty-bitties. They had been like toddlers when Hurricane Andrew hit. And we're still traumatized, and it still had stories of living in tent cities. But I will never be more proud of any branch of our military as I was of the National Guard in the response to Hurricane Andrew.
Without a doubt. Without a doubt. Yes.
That allowed that area to have some semblance of humanity and live like human beings. And they didn't live large. It was barely a human way to live. But because our National Guard was there, we were able to get through that crisis. And by we, I mean the people of South Florida. I was not in Homestead where the real devastation was at that time. But the way our National Guard did what it was supposed to do and guarded our nation and the people of our nation and made sure that they were safe and okay. Ever since 9/11, I have never even heard tell of our National Guard operating under that paradigm. And it's not the people who serve. It's not the men and women of our National Guard. It's men and women of our National Guard who joined that branch of service because they wanted to protect their neighbors and instead wound up getting shipped off to Iraq.
Absolutely
in Afghanistan. Yeah. And the fact is, now is the time where we could really use our National Guard helping to keep us safe at home.
Yes.
And, and we're not going to have that. We're just, because they're just not there. They're overseas. Now is the time when we could, FEMA, the National Guard, I'm sure I'm missing other services that our government is supposed to provide to us in times of emergency.
The Coast Guard.
The Coast Guard, the Coast Guard guards our coasts.
Right. But they could at least help with, trying to limit any of this craziness from, exacerbating.
Sure, and I'm sure that our Coast Guard, could have a function to play in, making sure that the things that come in and out of our country, not people.
Right.
For God's sake, not keeping, not aiming guns at people who are trying to have a better life, but
exactly,
but goods and services, making sure that our shipping lanes are safe, making sure that that our products are coming from and going to where they're supposed to. Those things. Again, I can't speak for the auspices of all of the amazing things that our Coast Guard does, and I know some folks who have served in the Coast Guard and served with distinction. I just don't know all that much about that particular branch, but I do know.
You can totally use their help to try to get all of the supplies in, especially for these test kits and any of that kind of thing. I mean, they can play a vital role in helping us out with that.
Yeah,
and getting over here faster.
And all of our goods and all of our services, all of our governmental services should be doing what they're tasked to do. And if they were doing that, if our National Guard was keeping us safe and helping make sure everybody was okay, if FEMA was there to deal with it's the Federal Emergency Management Association, for Christ's sake.
That makes sense.
Maybe
emergency.
maybe they could be activated and supported in a way that would allow them to be
Right.
effective. We should, even if it's not UBI, we should be having those policies enacted that
Mhm.
Bernie's talking about. And it would
Yep.
really help if we had a president who took the issue seriously.
Mhm.
But circling back around, the person who, to me, and again, this is my view, but then again,
Right.
I'm the one broadcasting. Um, the it really seems to me that the only person in this whole crisis so far that is anywhere kind of close to the White House,
Mhm.
who is acting presidential, has been Bernie.
Yeah.
And I think that might be
Totally.
part of the strategy. I mean, I think the
Yeah.
strategy might be, Bernie, I think with all of this crazy, maybe if you started, if you are the one acting like president, as you
Mhm.
would, if you actually are the only one being presidential, maybe people will just give you the job because you're the only one
Right.
that really
Right.
seems qualified to do it.
Oh, without a doubt. Oh, yeah. And he has a plan. He has a plan. He has to help the people. That's kind of what public service is.
It is.
To
It
help
is
the
what public
people.
service is. Okay, so if we had a bunch of comments, now is the time when I would be reading them or sharing them with people. And B, I can't thank you enough for hopping on
Oh,
here
dude.
with me
Thank you. Thank you for including me. This was great.
on this our inaugural chat here
Yes.
with Facebook Live. And folks, stay tuned. We will be posting more stuff, as we
It
go.
was.
And again, if we're sort of more isolated and more quarantined, on the one hand, that is a bad thing. On the positive side, though, that does give me the opportunity to try and expand the reach of your voice.
Right. Right.
I don't necessarily do this for me to expand the reach of my voice. I do
It's
this because
more.
I want you guys to have more of a voice, and I want to be able to let you know that you're not alone, in this thing. And so keep an eye out, and we'll be back with you soon. B, thanks again, man. Do you have anything you
Oh,
want to say?
I just wanted to ask you a quick question,
Yeah.
hypothetical. Do you think if maybe when Clyburn endorsed Biden, if Jesse Jackson endorsed Bernie at that same time in South Carolina, you think that would have made a difference or no?
I don't know. See, this is, I can say this because this is my heritage. This is kind of like a Jewish goodbye. So,
Yeah.
B, I don't really know.
Mhm.
I'd like to think that it might have, but the question is this: how much of a reach does Jesse Jackson have? I mean, we saw in corporate media
Right.
where Kamala came out and endorsed Biden around the same time as Jesse
Right.
Jackson endorsed Bernie, and the only thing all we
Right.
saw in corporate media and people responding from that are in the Biden camp. Over and over again, we saw them saying, "Oh, well, which one is more relevant and which one actually matters and what have you." Personally, for me, the fact that Jesse Jackson who has sort of been a little more out of the public eye, would actually get on stage
Right.
and rally people around and endorse Bernie, to me, that is in truth the bigger endorsement.
Right. I agree.
But then
I agree.
again, I'll be the first one to admit, I remember I was maybe 13. I'd have to do the math, and that escapes me right now. But when Jesse Jackson ran for president, and I know that my politics had not formed, so I didn't understand what the Rainbow Coalition was, and I didn't understand who this guy was that was running for president, and I had never expanded out my own thought. I was too young to have developed my own political thought at that point. But looking at it afterwards, looking
Right.
at what the Rainbow Coalition was, looking at what that movement was, to
Right.
try and get him elected. And yeah, I think it was way earlier than our country would have been
Right.
ready socially.
But do you think it would have helped with the boomer generation?
No,
and then
I
to
don't.
say,
I don't.
You don't think so?
Because I don't think
Okay.
it helped Bernie any. I don't think it helped him any this past Tuesday.
Mm, got it.
Now, granted, that was there was a whole bunch of momentum that came about on Super Tuesday after the Clyburn
You're right.
endorsement, and then
Right.
all these other endorsements surrounding that, all coming in this perfect storm, which elevated that candidate. But
Right.
I don't think the timing of that Jesse
Mhm.
Jackson endorsement as a whole would have changed a lot. I do think, and still think, that an Elizabeth Warren endorsement might have
At
helped.
that, yeah.
I think, as we've seen with TYT, as Kyle has also brought out, as Crystal may have or may not have, this idea
Mhm.
of he has an endorsement here, throw an endorsement there, and it doesn't matter how much if those people
It's
resonate with
just
the
to stop the
individuals.
movement.
It's just
Stop the
like a
movement.
tit for tat kind of, okay, this
Right.
person endorsed you, that person endorsed me.
Right.
This person endorsed
Right.
you, that person endorsed me. And I understand, I think it was Kyle who brought up that
Mhm.
strategy. And I think
Right.
that may have been effective,
Right.
but I think no matter who endorses Bernie, the
Mhm.
corporate media, the quote unquote establishment wing of the party, and by
Right.
that, I don't believe that people individually, I want to be clear about this. When I talk about establishment, I'm not talking about individual people, because the individual people are not an establishment. I'm
Right.
talking about party leadership who
Right.
is trying to put their thumb on the scales to unduly influence this election. I'm talking
Right.
about corporate media who, quite
Mhm.
frankly, and this is going to be a big thing to say, but quite
Mhm.
frankly, I believe is interfering with this election,
Right.
with a fair and free election, with
Right.
all of with the sides that they're taking, and that's coming from way up top. Because
Right.
let's face it, the big corporate media conglomerates, the four or so people that actually own all of the news
Mhm.
corporations that put out the news that most people consume,
Mhm.
their interests are not served by a Bernie Sanders presidency.
Oh no,
All the
not
way
at
at the
all.
top, they're
Not at
talking
all.
about
If
it's
anything, it's a threat.
yeah, it's a
It's
threat
a
to
threat.
their money. It's a threat to their bottom line.
Oh,
And
without it.
because it is a threat to their bottom line, they are using their huge megaphone
Mhm.
to unduly influence and interfere in this election. And I don't think it should be criminal as a corporation that we need to criminalize the news
Mhm.
organizations, but the people on top, we already know that the people on top of these billion-dollar industries never wind up actually paying the price for the criminal activity
Right.
that they perpetrate. We saw that
Right.
on Wall Street. We see that all the time. I feel that nothing less than interference with a free and fair election is going on behalf of those corporate media companies. And they're
Right.
never going to pay the price for it.
True.
So I don't think they will always find a way on down the line to cause the talking heads on cable news to toe the line or be in fear of their job. I mean, let us
Right.
remember. God, I sounded like a preacher. Let us remember. But let us remember, at one point, Cenk Uygur was on MSNBC.
Right.
Like him, don't like him. At one point, he was. He did not
Mhm.
toe the line as far. He got huge ratings, but
Mhm.
he did not speak in the voice of the
Corporate
corporate
media.
media up top of him. And
Mhm.
what he was saying threatened their bottom line and was
Mhm.
too out there for them, they cut him loose. Crystal Ball, at one point, was on MSNBC as well.
And she got taken out because she was so big on, hey, we need to be the left,
Yeah, I mean,
So, mhm.
anybody that has sort of broken through the
No,
barrier to at least get on that cable news,
I, I
as a
just
talking
wanted
head.
to, yeah. No, I just wanted to tell you one thing real
Yeah,
quick.
no, please, man, I got all the time in the world. I
It
scheduled this
was
for two
nice.
hours.
It was really nice to see. I mean, it's a little late right now, but it would have been nicer to see this before the Super Tuesday. But I don't know if you've seen it on CNN, but Jake Tapper,
Mm-hmm.
he went ahead and he said, I'm getting a 2004 vibe here
Hmm.
of how everybody is coalescing around the safe choice, which in this case is Biden, and in 2004 it is John Kerry,
Right.
to try to go against an incumbent, scary president like George W. Bush. And in this case, it's Trump.
Right. And
So
Kyle, to your
yeah,
point, Kyle has been, talking of strategy, and and we're talking about, again, Kyle Kalinske. Is he the Humanist Report still? I don't remember what it's called.
No.
It's the Kyle Kalinske show.
Yeah. No, Kyle is like called Secular
Talk. That's it. Secular Talk. So, one of the things Kyle's been talking about is doubling down on illustrating that Bernie is actually the safe choice.
Yeah. Oh, without a doubt.
And he actually showed that Tapper clip where he was like, where Tapper's like, this is feeling a lot like when everyone coalesced behind John Kerry, and then he got defeated in a landslide. And I'm paraphrasing. That's not the words that Tapper used.
He didn't just lose; he lost masterfully.
Massively. I remember exactly what I was doing. I was working in the West Las Vegas Library on that day. And I'm sitting there posting up on this big board on all the events that we have coming up, sort of watching in my periphery as John Kerry just got decimated.
Oh, he got destroyed.
And at this time, the candidate that the establishment and the neoliberal wing of the party, again, if you don't understand why I'm not calling them centrists, go back and watch the beginning of this video. But the safe choice seems like Biden to them. But he's not.
He's not. He's actually the scary choice.
He is not the safe choice here. The safe choice is the one that is going to bring about energy. And, I think Crystal Ball had a wonderful observation. If you've got just a couple more minutes, there'd be.
Right.
When Crystal was talking about how, let me preface this. I apologize. Let me preface this a little bit. In 2016, and I try not to relitigate that election because it's a traumatic experience for so many of us. But in 2016, one of the big flaws, and it was not the only reason Hillary lost, but it was a big reason why Hillary had difficulty, wasn't just that that she did not have energy and enthusiasm. She made a purposeful choice. Her choice was and Tim Kaine, who I referred to at the time and still do as Senor Sock Puppets, because when every time he gave a speech, I kept feeling like he was talking to a bunch of kindergartners, and he could get none of them to be interested in what he had to say, much less a bunch of adults. And I kept expecting him to resort to pulling soft puppets out of his pockets to try and make what he said somehow interesting. But and the fact that his big thing was that he was fluent in Spanish.
It was that good.
What an awful vice presidential candidate, and what a far center right.
Oh my God!
Politician he is.
You might as well just get a Republican.
Exactly. Well, he's every Republican's favorite Democrat. So the idea that she would pander to the centrist Republicans or the moderate Republicans, or what Crystal referred to as the Never Trump Republicans. By trying to pander to the Never Trump Republicans, she purposefully alienated the progressive wing of her party. And how she could do that after being at the convention, where almost half of the delegates at the convention were delegates for Bernie. It was it was so close to being an even split that basically she made the purposeful choice to alienate the most active, energized half of her own party, instead trying to pander to this myth of Never Trump Republicans, moderate Republicans. I love how Crystal Ball says this. She says, pandering to the Never Trump Republicans, of which there are maybe 4 of them, and all of them work for MSNBC.
Yeah, pretty much.
And I know that's a little bit of an overestimation. There may be only 5 of them, but no, I know that they exist. But the fact is, making the choice to pander to that demographic, rather than in any way move left to embrace the actual center and majority of your party, which is progressive. The thing is, it's the establishment wing, the neoliberals, the safe choice Biden supporters do not actually represent the majority of the party. They represent the majority of the party who feels that voting will make a difference, and the subsection of the party that has been in the party the longest. That is not an estimation of all of the card carrying people with Democrat on their voter registration card, many of whom feel that the only reason why they still have a D in front of their name is so that they can participate in the party process in terms of the primaries. And they keep holding out hope that somehow their voice will be heard. Well, the longer in these big elections like this one in 2016, the longer that those people, those massive amounts of people within the Democratic Party get increasingly alienated, they're going to leave. They're going to walk. And this perception that somehow, and I consider myself among them because I am a progressive. I've been a Democrat my whole life, but I am a progressive, and my party is not. It is displaying themselves to be willfully not, and is showing themselves to be completely counter to my beliefs, using any means necessary to obstruct a candidate who lives those values, which, by the way, are the values in the Democratic Party platform.
Right.
They are doing everything they can to obstruct progress to the point where their chosen anointed candidate this time around has even said publicly that he would veto Medicare for all.
Which kind of goes against the whole thing of being a Democrat. I mean, it's like, what are you doing? You know?
Well, it brings about the question: what really is a Democrat? and so people that speak to me, and lots of people talk to me on a regular basis, or talk with me on a regular basis. People who are talking with me on a regular basis are saying, well, if I'm not a real Democrat because I believe in these things, if Bernie's not a real Democrat because he believes in these things, then why is it that I register to vote as a Democrat?
Right.
Because now I'm not planning on leaving the party, because I'm one of those, as long as I have that D in front of my name and as long as I do my part, I would rather they be forced to see me and forced to hear me. But the fact is, it is a valid question.
I agree.
If the Democratic Party does not share those values that are in the Democratic Party platform, then what is this party with a D in front of it?
Right.
It should be adhering to its platform. And it does not seem to be, because we have their chosen candidate going out there and basically saying that he would veto legislation if by some miracle it gets through. He would veto legislation that is in keeping with their party platform. This is the same gentleman. Gosh, I don't mean to go on I'm not attacking low blows on Joe. This is actual truth.
Right.
This is a candidate who talked about curing cancer as the moonshot that we needed to have in his generation when Obama tasked him with curing cancer in like his last State of the Union or second to last State of the Union. Whatever it takes. Did they say to Joe, Joe, I know President Obama wanted you to cure cancer, whatever it takes, and that's the moonshot, but how are you going to pay for it?
Right.
You know, when you have a moonshot, you say, we are going to do this. Like Kennedy, Kennedy had his flaws too. But like Kennedy, you said, we are going to go to the moon and do the other things.
Not because it's easy.
In this decade, not because it's easy, but because it's hard. At no point at that time did people coalesce around Kennedy and say, yeah, John, we'd really like to go to the moon. And we really see that it's kind of important to go to the moon and maybe beat the Russian communists there. But how are you going to pay for it? No. They said, we're going to do this, and it is going to be a very hard thing to do because it's important that we do this. And we're going to get it done. They did not sit there and, like Medicare for all. Right now, a Medicare for all single-payer system is crucial to the survival of our people, not the survival of our consultant class or our Wall Street class, our actual people. And that is being shown in stark relief by this crisis that we're in now, because this crisis would not be remotely the kind of crisis that it is if we had a Medicare for all single payer system installed right now. But we don't.
I just want to add one thing to
Add
what you
whatever you
just
like,
said.
sir.
And honestly, from what I've seen, like from Biden's platform and Trump's platform, there's no difference. It's an identical type thing from what I see. It feels like, I mean, we're basically having a war between two Republicans. I mean, that's what I'm seeing based on everything that I'm seeing right now, and it scares me. You know,
And
to
I
be
hear
honest
you.
with you. It scares.
I
It
don't
scares.
agree only in the aspect that I think with regard to certain social issues.
Hmm.
Do I think that the Supreme Court justices that would get nominated under a Joe Biden presidency,
Hmm.
and again, I'm not accepting that we won't have Bernie as the nominee yet, but in the event that we had a Joe Biden presidency, I think I would feel much more comfortable about the Supreme Court nominees, and the judicial appointments that Biden would put forth, as opposed to the ones that Trump would put forth. But again, I mean, we're looking at a president who,
Hmm.
we don't have enough. We could not stay awake long enough to be talking about the issues that this president has. But the
Right.
fact is, you know, there are lots of things that Joe Biden would be better than Trump socially, in terms of some
You would at
social
least be a
issues.
nicer person, I guess.
And
Fully bullshit,
4 years
possibly.
ago, I would have said that he would certainly be a better president to watch when he gives speeches, if only because I doubt his speech would just be lying and profiteering and reality TV.
Right.
But I guess those things still hold true, although as hard as it has been for Biden to speak on the campaign trail or show up
Mhm.
in the debates thus far, I don't see how he gets through a State of the Union address. But
I,
that's a different issue.
I honestly don't see how he can even get through the first 10 minutes against Trump. I don't see that even
I think he'd
happening.
be done before it even started.
I
But then
mean,
again,
I
we
mean,
both
I think he'd just be walking off the stage somewhere like he did in that Illinois ad. I mean, I was just like, what is he
7 minutes,
doing?
really? 7
He's like
minutes.
walking to this other side. I'm like, what are you doing? And that was his ad.
Man, I was surprised that we
That
did
was
not
his ad.
get I'm surprised that we did not get publicity about his 7 minute appearance at his campaign rally. I was
Yeah,
surprised that he wasn't say, "See, this is how Joe Biden will use his time most effectively." He only
right,
speaks at his rallies for 7 minutes. I mean, come on.
right,
I mean, how are
right.
you going to? I was surprised that they didn't try to spin it some other way. But really, how could you spin that without making it seem like a cry of desperation? But either way, you know, I look at it, and there are ways in which I think that even a neoliberal controlled presidency would be better than a Trump presidency. But what really comes to question for a lot of people is, harkening back to the point I made about, or you made, or I made, somebody made
Mm-hmm.
about 20 minutes ago,
Yeah, yeah.
um, which was, you know, about things that Crystal Ball had pointed out.
Mm.
You know, I said this in 2016, and I got yelled at. I was at a North Valley Democratic meeting, and I got just literally screamed at and shouted at, by their former president. I'm not going to name him because that would just be uncool, but the former president of that organization, for
Mm-hmm.
daring to say what you do when you go into the voting booth is legally protected as private.
Okay.
And this was about the Clinton nomination. And I said, you know, when you go in to vote, nobody has the right to demand, not your employer, not the police, nobody has the right to demand who you voted for when you go into the booth. You go in, you
Right.
cast your vote. It is protected that is a private ballot.
So it's the sanctity of the ballot
Yeah,
box.
that is private. Um, but I said, what is it that makes people think that we owe Hillary our vote? Now, at the end of the day,
Good point.
I did a lot of phone calls in that election, and many who might be watching the stream may have received those phone calls from me. But I did a lot of phone calls saying, I'm not even going to talk to you about the top of the ticket, but here are all the reasons why it's important that you still vote, and that your local elections, your representatives, all of those things, it is important for you to make your voice heard and have your say. There are ballot initiatives. At that point, there was the ballot initiative about legalizing marijuana, which if Joe Biden and his reefer madness crew have their way, they're going to try and put the kibosh on that where it hasn't already happened, and continue the failing war on drugs. But the fact of the matter is, I said over and over again, you need to go vote. And I'm not even going to tell you who to vote for on the top of the ticket, because I know that's a non-starter. And we talked to hundreds of progressives about that. And many of them were very angry with us about doing that. But I have said over and over again, nobody has the right to expect your vote, no matter what letter you have on your voter's registration. Nobody has the right to expect your vote, and you are not obligated to cast your vote for any candidate. So what Crystal was saying, though, made a lot of sense, because she said those vote no matter who Democrats, those normie Democrats, as Kyle would say, they are going to vote blue no matter who, regardless. Right. So pandering to the suburban white college-educated population, the suburban white housewives, the upper middle class educated baby boomer African American population, the older population of color, which is the only place where Bernie's kind of had trouble getting inroads. Whereas he has the vote of color all the way up until like 45 years old.
Yeah, anyone 45 or under is totally with Bernie.
But those over that age, they're gonna vote blue no matter who. So why are you pandering to the people who are already gonna vote blue no matter who, and alienating the people who are out there screaming, "I don't owe you my vote"?
Yeah, and just to let you know, those people who basically closed their nose and voted for Hillary in 2016. I really doubt if they're going to do that now. I think that's a thing of like, I mean, you need to be aware of this. You really want to win against Trump, if that's what your major thing is, those people who plugged their nose and voted for Hillary, it's kind of asking a lot for them to do it again for somebody who's essentially the same thing as a Republican. I mean, it's like, if you look at it, like even Biden, like throughout his life, he's had this tendency to just go toward whatever the Republicans wanted, and he'd be like, okay, let's do that, because that's his trajectory most of the time. I mean, people have got to realize one major thing. They were thinking about doing a grand bargain with Mitch McConnell on Social Security, okay? And the only reason why that Social Security cuts didn't happen was because Mitch McConnell and Ryan were too greedy, and they said it's not enough. They wanted more. So because they wanted more, nothing happened. So just remember this. It's because of the fact that they were more greedy is the reason why we didn't get Social Security. If they actually did the grand bargain, all of you baby boomers and all these people around over 65, you would be having cuts on your Social Security thanks to Biden and Obama. Just I want everybody to realize that.
Truth.
That is a big thing,
I mean, it is a big thing.
This is policy. This is policy. This is an attack. This is policy,
But you know what? When, and we see this in our interpersonal relationships all the time.
Right.
Uncomfortable truths.
Yes.
When utilized to back up an argument to those for whom those truths are uncomfortable, almost always feels like an attack.
Exactly.
It's just the truth. I mean, that is the truth. It's in public record. Joe Biden voted for the Iraq War. He doesn't deny it. It's in the record.
Yep.
But you know what? When you have to defend those positions,
Mm-hmm.
when you have to defend those positions, then the fact that you have to defend makes you feel like somebody is on the offense. And
Mm-hmm.
we associate that as attack because we don't like, I don't mind mess, politically. You know
Mm-hmm.
what? Make a mess. This is a
Right.
democracy. The reason democracy is supposed to function is we're supposed to argue about differing opinions. We're
Mm-hmm.
supposed our representatives are supposed to take those opinions, debate those opinions amongst
Mm-hmm.
the other representatives, and come to a conclusion, usually
Mm-hmm.
which won't make anybody ecstatic, but will make everybody feel like they had a say in the process.
Right. Right.
Many Bernie supporters have gotten more doubling down on things. Like, I remember when I was sitting in Philadelphia talking with a wonderful, wonderful man from up north,
Mm.
who he and I struck up sort of a friendship. We actually share the same birthday. If you happen to, I'm not going to name him by name because I don't tend to do that, to individual people who haven't expressed that it's okay. But you know who you are if you're out there, and if you happen to see this live stream. We
Yeah.
sat together in Philadelphia, and it was uncomfortable for both of us. We're both kind of large mammals, so we knew that we were going to be stuck there
Hey,
in these seats.
so good.
We're going to be stuck.
I'm one of those too. It's okay.
And so we struck up a conversation, right?
Mhm.
And this was actually covered a little bit in the newspaper. So we started talking, and I was talking to him about all of the hopes and the dreams that I had for this country, and
Right.
what it felt like to be in support of a candidate who shared those same dreams for our country.
Mhm.
And then, because we share the dreams for our country that are at the core of social justice, being
Exactly.
basically beset on every side by people attacking us.
Mm-hmm.
And so I was talking about these policies. We had a really, really great discussion. And he was a delegate for Hillary Clinton.
Oh, nice.
And that's why initially we were like, you could just feel the palpable tension when we sat next to each other, or were sat next to each other in our delegate section in Philly. And I looked over, and at one point I saw that he was crying.
Mm.
And I asked him, "What's going on, man? You all right? I didn't mean to upset you." And
Right.
he told me, and I may be paraphrasing, he's welcome to correct me somehow if I am.
Right.
And he looked over and he said, "I didn't get it. I didn't understand until right now what it must be like
Mm.
to be on your side of the fence
Right.
in the Democratic Party. I didn't understand until I actually had a conversation and talked through this, what it must have felt like to be a Bernie supporter through this process."
Right.
And he shared with me that he had supported Clinton, but he had made that decision early on.
Right.
And once he made that decision, he doubled down on it and kept doubling down on his decision to support Clinton. And it didn't matter. It really didn't matter what anybody said to him at that point,
Right. Right.
because he just kept doubling down. And anytime somebody would sort of lob, a criticism of Clinton, he would double down some more. And so here's this big dude, sitting next to another big dude at this convention, from different racial backgrounds, from different upbringings, and actually having a moment of unity because we understood each other. We understood how we got there. And that was something that was able to occur between two individual people.
Can I ask what made you unified a little bit with that person? Like, what was the issue or something that kind of helped him to see the?
He understood what it was like. He understood what he had not actually talked with a Bernie supporter. He had heard the narrative. He had heard the Bernie bro narrative. He had seen the smears.
Which have been proven to be false.
Absolutely proven to be false. He had seen the smears. He had heard his side of the fence. He had heard all of their arguments and their responses to perceived attacks and perceived slights. But he hadn't actually talked in depth with any of us.
Right.
And that was pervasive, and that has been pervasive. It's like, not to pull an ethnic thing, right? But it's like I grew up on the East Coast, and I grew up in some in the Southeast, but also my family is mostly from the New York area. Grew up in the Miami area, and we spent a lot of time in Georgia and in the southeastern states, and I do consider myself kind of a southern upbringing too. But the fact of the matter is, I had never been in a place that had so few Jews until I moved to Vegas.
Wow.
And when I first moved out here, we hadn't had a large migration of the Orthodox Jewish population in Summerlin like we do now.
Right.
I happened to be dating a Jewish woman at the time. And
Nice.
yes, I know, I had dated. I know it's a shock.
No, it's good that you found somebody who was similar to you. That's what I was saying. Nice.
Surprisingly, yeah. So
It's not easy to do. So.
it's not, and that's a whole other channel to talk about the horror that is dating in Las Vegas.
We'll get to that later.
Yeah, that's a whole other. We'll get to that in the after.
Adam's personal life.
Yeah, in the after show. But so I decided and she was a practicing Jewish person, and so I had this house, and I decided I was going to have a Passover Seder. For any of you who don't know what that is, think the Last Supper and Easter, and you'll kind of be getting there.
Okay.
But it was going to have this observance of the holiday, and one of the things that we need is matzah, right? Again, this is before the large influx of Orthodox Jewish folk in Summerlin. I drove around the Vegas Valley for hours before I could find a human being in a store that had any idea what matzah was at all. I'm out there.
Good for you, man.
And
Good
I'm like going, they're like, well, we know we have an ethnic session, but that's largely Hispanic food.
Right.
And maybe over there near the ethnic food, it wasn't. But I finally did find matzah. That later on, the next year, I found it at Costco like 6 months early. It's like Passover generally happens in April, end of March or in April. And I found it there in like January, like huge things of matzah at Costco in January. Kind of out of touch with the Jewish community a little bit. But I grew up surrounded by multiracial, multi-ethnic people.
Nice.
This place here was not that when I moved out here to Vegas. So, one of the things that I recognized, and this is getting to the point, is that most people who are anti-Semitic have never, and particularly in this country, have never met a Jewish person in person.
Right.
They'll say a lot about
interesting.
Communities tend to be insular, and that's not just with Jewish folks. It's the only reason I bring up Judaism in a real stark relief is that most of the time, I mean, I got the nose, I got the swarthy complexion, but most of the time,
I didn't know you were Jewish.
Exactly,
so.
That's right. I didn't know you were Jewish. So
just to let you know, I was in a Jewish fraternity. Okay,
which one?
Alpha Epsilon Pi.
You were in AE Pi. That's funny. I was not.
Yep.
I was not a fraternity guy in college. But the fact is that because a large subsection of the Jewish population does not have anything overtly physical to identify people as Jewish. I know a lot of Jewish folks who one would never assume or think they were Jewish. I know people who their only vision of what a Jewish person looks like is wearing all black with the hat and the tzitzits and the tzitzits down there and the curly cues, on their head, the payas.
You know what's funny is I've seen that and I never knew that they were Jewish. So,
well,
like for me,
good on you.
for me, like whenever I see people, I don't really know their national, like especially like for you, I had no clue that what your ethnic background is or anything like that. You could be anything,
Sure.
in my opinion. So like I have a hard time even figuring it out. Like I can at least tell if somebody is like maybe Hispanic or like East Indian. I could tell that,
Sure.
but I can't tell
Well, that's
like,
that's one of those ironic things. Is growing up growing up in South Florida.
right.
When I was a young person, trying to do acting work on camera or on stage or whatever.
Right.
Now, granted, I was in the sun a lot more, and so I had a darker complexion because I
Okay.
tan a lot, and that's because we're all mutts. And
You
we all
still
have
have European features, though. You still have European
Sure.
features, so
So
it's hard to tell.
the assumption, because I had darker skin from being in the sun, and because I had those European features, my sister was even more prevalent with. Um, they always wanted to cast us, if they wanted to cast us in anything television wise, as Latino. The first
Yeah,
question we
or
would
maybe
get,
Italian, or
or
maybe Italian.
yeah,
Uh,
but the first question growing up in South Florida was like, "Do you speak Spanish?"
yeah,
And when you're going to a casting call. But my point is
right.
this: because people don't know other cultures, and people make assumptions about other cultures without ever having met anyone from those cultures. And I'm not saying that being a Bernie supporter, all you have to do is look at this live stream to see that there is significant diversity amongst Bernie
Oh,
supporters.
without a
If
doubt.
you
Oh my
didn't
goodness.
already know that,
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
clearly you and I do not fit into all of the same demographics. There is significant diversity within the Sanders movement, or the political revolution as we often call it. But the fact
I think,
is,
yeah,
it still suffers from that phenomenon of I'm
right.
going, not me, but the neoliberal
Mm.
Democrat, the
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 narrative.
boomer Democrat, the narrative is, oh, I couldn't associate with those people, or
Yeah,
there's a view that they already have of what a
right.
person who believes in the political revolution or a Bernie supporter, and all you have to do is watch any media not
Hmm.
controlled by the corporate interests, like
Right.
independent media, like TYT, like Rising, like Kyle Kalinske, like Figueredo, like us, like
Mm.
I mean, I could rattle off a whole bunch more, but the
Right.
fact is that proves the lie, because it's an
Hmm.
extraordinarily diverse group of people.
It is.
But if you
It is.
are completely divorced from that, if you are in the Beltway bubble mentality,
Right.
if you are in the echo chamber of corporate media,
Hmm.
all you hear is the same narratives over and over and over and over again. And that is
Right.
why I often refer to it in the same as propaganda, which it is, and I refer to it as
Absolutely.
indoctrination,
Without a doubt.
which it is. It's indoctrination,
Yeah.
but it's
Yep.
willing indoctrination. We allow ourselves to be indoctrinated in that way, and before you know it, you meet someone. Well, not now, because we're all self quarantining. Maybe too soon for that joke, but I mean,
Maybe after the pandemic.
maybe after the pandemic. But we meet people in the grocery
Right.
store or whatever, and the lines are very long right now. So
Yes.
you meet somebody and you're talking, and you actually get this. I got this the other
Mm.
day. Huh? You don't look like a Bernie supporter. And I was like,
Yeah.
what the hell does that mean? And of
What
course,
do you
I know that if I
Bernie
just looked them in the
support?
face and I was like, what the hell is that supposed to mean?
Yeah.
I know they're going to be
Yeah.
like, aggression, aggression,
Bernie
Bernie
Bros!
bro, Bernie bro. But the fact is,
But I think people need to realize one thing. When they talk about the revolution or whatever, Bernie supporters are for, the only revolution that it's there is like really the common sense of when you go into government, you do public service. That's the only revolution that we really are, which I think is common sense.
well,
So
yeah,
so I think people kind of lose that because like they're so used to this corporate service as being part of government service. They expect it to like they're willing to allow for, I call it corruption, but people say it's what do you call it, legal money channeling. Okay, you can call it that. But I mean, I consider it a bribe, but other people consider it, oh, it's just legal channeling. But I mean, to me, it seems more like, I mean, I think that's the big thing. We don't like that. That's what makes it so hard for us to go with any other corporate types.
Well, people can justify just about anything in their mind, you know.
Right, right. But I think that's really the thing that people can't get. Like, I mean, for me now, it's like, oh my God, I don't know. Bernie's still in it. Let's remember that.
Right.
He's still in it. But I mean, to think about even Biden versus Trump, I'm like, oh my God, please don't give me a nightmare, you know? So I just, it's very hard for us because we are so, like, we think about it based on public service. Everything we think of is public service. So it's hard for us to think about somebody doing something for some other corporation or some other favors, and for us that feels dirty to us.
Sure.
And that's really the only revolution that we're following, is that we feel dirty.
I mean, for me,
that.
Yeah, and you're right. I mean, and yet, you know, but the thing is, you know, I'll never forget the first time I went and voted for Bernie, or had the opportunity to go voting for Bernie.
First time I voted for him was during this primary.
See,
I've never voted ever.
For
so
me,
I mean,
you know,
I was very new. And when I seen it, I was like, oh my God, I can't imagine myself voting for somebody else. I mean, it's hard.
Well, you can't unsee it. I mean, the thing is,
right.
I mean, I remember, you know, I went and I voted for him in the primary in 2016, and at the time, I would have been okay with a Clinton victory. I was not as aware of the inner workings of things as I am now. I was focusing my public service in another arena, and so I went to do caucusing, and through a confluence of events, I wound up becoming an ad hoc precinct captain because Bernie didn't have people on the ground, or at least not as many people on the ground.
For the first time here,
right?
So.
Yeah. And so, but we get done with that. We get done with our caucus, and we're still calculating out what our caucus results are, and they've already announced it for Hillary. And I remember when I walked to my caucus, because I did walk, I was like, wow, I'm voting for Bernie. I so didn't know all about Bernie yet. I was just starting to. But as I was walking to my caucus, I was like, it's only like 3 blocks away, and I should really walk because, you know, if I want to support the candidate that believes in the environment, I ought to not drive to my caucus, right? Nice. So anyway, so I go and I walk there, and the whole time, I felt like I was doing something naughty.
Really?
Yeah, because I was not. I felt like I was doing something that was not in line with the perception of what a good capital D Democrat would do.
Gotcha.
The whole time I felt like I was doing something naughty by not just getting in line with the Clinton machine.
Right.
But then when my entire polling place had not submitted their stuff and the race had already been called for Hillary, that just pissed me off. And that's when I started to see the corruption, and I'll just call it corruption, the corruption and the inner workings of our political system. And as I volunteered with and continued working pretty much full-time as a volunteer for the Bernie campaign on top of my full-time job through that primary season, and with the people that I came into contact with doing volunteering that took me sort of like in communications area, in print media and stuff like that, it became very clear. And I saw more and more about this is not a government that is speaking for me. And I think when I talk about a political revolution, or when I think about a political revolution, what I'm thinking about is realigning the paradigm of our government more with what it is on the paper.
Right.
I am looking for a government of, by, and for the people, as opposed to of the people, by the lobbyists, for the corporations. Right. I mean, we need to realign what our paradigm is here, and that's what I look at. and that's what I see as a political revolution.
Right.
We need to make the
Correct.
government work for the people instead of the people en masse working to sustain a government that is not benefiting them, that is benefiting the corporate structure. I mean,
hmm
I
hmm
I look at this and it's disturbing to me, and it's not how I was
Right.
raised to believe that things should be. Um,
Right.
and a lot of that comes from. I mean, I understand what Bernie's talking about now that he's been a little bit more open about his religion. Um,
Mm.
this idea of what we call in the Jewish faith, what we call of tikkun olam, and I am what we refer
Right.
to generally as I was brought up as a Reformed Jew, and many people who know me know that I am a very spiritual person.
Mm.
I do not see my practice of metaphysics in any way being
hmm
counter to my identity as a Jewish person.
Right.
So I know some people may have different opinions there, but ultimately I was brought up to believe in this concept that we call tikkun olam, which is repairing the world. And the idea is we need to live
Nice.
lives in which we leave the world better for
That
everyone
and how we came in.
than how we came in. And it is
Yeah.
our job to strive to make the world a better place for the least among us. That's what I was
Exactly.
raised to believe. And so when Bernie talks about that, not only do I see a president that I can be proud of, I look at it and I see here's someone that shares my intrinsic values.
hmm
The problem is
What about?
extrinsic forces so often do not give us validation for our intrinsic values.
Right.
Now, I'll save that for the psychology channel, but that's truly what I think the Bernie phenomenon is, and why people, once they have permission or feel that they've given license to vote for a candidate that shares their values, it's
Right.
like they become a much happier and lighter person. It's like you
Yep.
can feel the albatross released from their neck. You can feel the
It,
weight
it's
come off
it's
their
almost
shoulders.
like you feel like you're yourself. You
Yeah,
know, like your inner self comes out. It's kind of like I think that's kind of the experience that happened to me after I got to know about Bernie and all this other stuff, and I was just like, whoa! I really found out who I was from it, and I think that's a big thing. Like people don't realize it, but like when you actually go in and you don't expect to be changed, but it just happens
right.
because you actually understand what it means to actually be alive.
Sure.
The
Yeah.
purpose of being alive is really to help people. Like because at the end of the day, we all are going to go underground. 6 feet under in one time. We don't know when that will be. But the thing that lasts after we are gone is what we did to help people.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the big things that people don't realize, or they think about these short term things, but they don't think about the long term.
Yeah,
You know.
absolutely.
So
Absolutely. So,
yeah,
B, thank you. I mean, we could go on and on and
I
on.
know. Hey, dude, it's always nice talking to you, my
And
man.
next time,
Yeah,
you'll have to come back on and,
yeah,
standing invitation. Anytime you wanna come back on
definitely.
Progressive Voice, or like I said,
Definitely.
hopefully,
Pleasure.
if we can get away from this self quarantining, maybe like actually physically
We
here.
can actually be to each
Yeah, we can
other.
actually be next to each other for this conversation, which, as you know, is something that I had hoped for a while. But at least
Yes,
the
yes.
technology exists that we can do it this way.
Yeah,
For
exactly.
anybody who tuned in, thank you so much, B.
Yeah. Thank
And
you, Adam.
we'll
It
chat
was
again
great.
soon. Folks,
Definitely.
keep an eye out. Follow us also on Facebook. I'm going to put a link once this is up on. Sorry, we are on Facebook. Wow, it is
Yeah,
almost 1 a.m. here.
yeah,
YouTube. So I
yeah.
will put a link to this YouTube thing here, and of course you'll see it pop up on our feed. If you haven't liked Progressive Voice on Facebook, do that. We're a little harder to find on YouTube because we're just launching, and you'll find some other
Yeah.
dude from his basement with a big scrolling thing constantly, and that's
Right.
not us. So please understand there are many
Awesome.
people with progressive and voice on
Right.
YouTube, but hopefully as we put out more content, and you like, sharing, and subscribing is incredibly important to that process to bump us up on the feed so that you can see
Right.
our content if that's what you're looking for.
Mm.
More coming up. And again, we'll be doing a lot of live streaming over the next
Right.
weeks, specifically because we want to make sure that you know you're not alone out there, even if you're self-quarantining, or keeping to yourselves because of this crisis that we're all facing. So, once again, I can't do it enough. Thank you, and thank you guys for showing up. And
one parting thing.
Yes.
Always remember, do something nice for somebody you don't know.
Yes.
That's part of the mantra.
Do something nice for someone you don't know, and remember, it's not me, it's not Bee.
It's us.
It's us. So y'all have a great morning, have a great Sunday, and we'll talk with you soon. Thanks again.
Awesome. Thanks, buddy. Take care.